Hello and welcome to Bloomsday Montreal 2020. This is the day, this is Bloomsday. And here we are gathered from Montreal and South Africa to bring you the immortal words of James Joyce in his extraordinary seminal novel, Ulysses. I just can't tell you how excited we are. And I wanted to, if you didn't get to the concert the other day, Dennis Trudeau, our host, coined a phrase which was impending Bloomsday. So we have now arrived at Bloomsday. It's no longer impending. I just wanted to point that out. And I want to introduce you first of all to Edmund Nash, who is our webmaster. He's got a lot of people to control today, a lot of buttons to push and things to do, and things can go wrong anywhere. This morning, our host, Kevin Wright, the power went off in his house. So he had to jump out of bed and get dressed in the hopes to get somewhere else to another computer, but fortunately the power came on and he was able to have his breakfast. So as I say, we never know what's going to happen with satellites and power and internet connections. So here's Edmund. He'll be able to control things and intervene should anything go awry. Edmund?
Hello, Kathleen. Yes, and inviting people to enjoy today's program. It will be wonderful. Thanks, Kathleen.
Thank you, Edmund. Yes, it's going to be very, very exciting. We have 6 readers this morning, and Kevin will introduce them one at a time. He's also going to be reading himself. Unfortunately, one of our readers had a health emergency and is unable to be here, so he's replacing Howard Krosnick, and you'll be pleased. And then this afternoon, we have the final chapter, Penelope. I will be reading excerpts from that, and with the noble assistance of 2 beautiful singers, Kathleen McAuliffe and Geraldina Mendez, who will sing some of the songs that Molly Bloom, the fictional Molly Bloom, was noted for in the Dublin of 1904. So without further ado, let me pass this extraordinary day on to Kevin Wright. Kevin?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Happy day. If you've been with us before on Bloomsday, you probably know that normally we do a dramatic reading which involves several people with several different voices. Because of the pandemic this year, each reading will be done by one person who will be doing all of the voices. So please bear that in mind. Now, Ulysses, sometimes known as the most dangerous book, is set in Dublin on June 14th, 1904. The date commemorates the first time that James Joyce walked with Nora Barnacle, who would eventually become his wife. In Ulysses, we follow a series of wanderings across the city of Dublin by Leopold Bloom, an advertising canvasser whose son Rudy died at 11 days old, 11 years beforehand, and Stephen Dedalus, a medical student back from Paris because his mother died and who is estranged from his father, Simon Dedalus. We have a father in search and a son in search of a father, whose paths, unknown to each other, cross during the day until they finally meet in the evening. Throughout the readings, the perceptive listener might catch glimpses of the landscape, physical, psychological, or even spiritual. In his book, Contentious Terrains, Ireland, Post-Colonial, Gothic, Derek Gladwin posits the idea that unlike the people of Americas, where the West was always a physical and/or psychological vista, Ireland, being an island, created a people who look inward, and that bogs hold their past. Stephen Dedalus states that history is the net which he was trying to escape. He wants a new perspective to be able to forge in the smithy of his soul the uncreated conscience of his race. With this in mind, let us begin. I hope that hearing some of these extracts will inspire you to take up the book and walk with Stephen and Leopold, and to read other parts between these few lines. The first section. Telemachus. It is now 8 o'clock in the morning on June 16th, 1904. The location is Tello Tower at Sandycove, a suburb of Dublin on the east coast. A series of these towers had been built during the 19th century to protect the British Empire from the attacks of Napoleon. Buck Mulligan is a frenemy of Stephen Dedalus. He's a medical student who is not beyond indulging in a bit of blasphemy. Stephen Dedalus has returned from Paris because of his mother's death, where he was trying to study medicine. Because he doesn't get along with his father, he's sharing accommodation with Mulligan and Haynes, an Englishman who fancies himself an anthropologist, out to study the Irish. The water and the location remind us of the circumstances of Telemachus as he decides to set out on the search for his father Ulysses. The cloud in this section merits being remembered, as well as the claustrophobic feeling of the tower. The water surrounds the island. Is there any escape? Clive Brewer, who is our first reader, is from the UK. He was born and brought up in Bournemouth, went to university in Sheffield, worked in London for a while, and emigrated to Montreal in 1975, and has lived here ever since. The mixture of places probably explains why his accent is also a mixture. He worked in IT for 40 years and now concentrates his real interests, history, literature, hiking, and above all, theater, where his latest appearance was with the group Dramatis. Clive, take it away.
Stately, plump Buck Mulligan came from the stairhead, bearing a bowl of lather on which a mirror and a razor lay crossed. A yellow dressing gown, ungirdled, was sustained gently behind him by the mild morning air. He held the bowl aloft and intoned, "Introibo ad altare Dei." Halted, he peered down the dark, winding stairs and called out coarsely, "Come up, Kinch! Come up, you fearful Jesuit!" Solemnly, he came forward and mounted the round gun rest. He faced about and blessed gravely thrice the tower, the surrounding country, and the awaking mountains. Then, catching sight of Stephen Dedalus, he bent towards him and made rapid crosses in the air, gurgling in his throat and shaking his head. Stephen Dedalus, displeased and sleepy, leaned his arms on the top of the staircase and looked coldly at the shaking, gurgling face that blessed him, equine in its length, and at the light, untonsured hair, grained and hued like pale oak. Buck Mulligan peeked an instant under the mirror and then covered the bowl smartly. "Back to barracks," he said sternly. He added in a preacher's tone, "For this, so dearly beloved, is the genuine Christine, body and soul and blood and ouns. Slow music, please. Shut your eyes, gents. One moment, a little trouble about these white corpuscles. Silence all." He peered sideways up and gave a long, low whistle of call, then paused a while in rapt attention, his even white teeth glistening here and there with gold points. "Chrysostomos." Two strong, shrill whistles answered through the calm. "Thanks, old chap. That will do nicely. Switch off the current, will you?" He skipped off the gun rest and looked gravely at his watcher, gathering about his legs the loose folds of his gown. The plump shadowed face and sullen oval jowl recalled a prelate, patron of arts in the Middle Ages. A pleasant smile broke quietly over his lips. The mockery of it! Your absurd name, an ancient Greek. He pointed his finger in friendly jest and went over to the parapet, laughing to himself. Stephen Dedalus stepped up, followed him wearily halfway, and sat down on the edge of the gun rest, watching him still as he propped his mirror on the parapet, dipped the brush in the bowl, and lathered cheeks and neck. Buck Mulligan's gay voice went on. My name is absurd too. Malachi Mulligan, 2 dactyls. But it has a Hellenic ring, hasn't it? Dripping and sunny like the Buck himself. We must go to Athens. Will you come if I can get the aunt to fork out 20 quid? He laid the brush aside and, laughing with delight, cried, Will he come, the jejune Jesuit? Ceasing, he began to shave with care. Tell me, Mulligan, Stephen said quietly. Yes, my love? How long is Haynes going to stay in this tower? Buck Mulligan showed a shaven cheek over his right shoulder. God, isn't he dreadful? A ponderous Saxon. He thinks you're not a gentleman. God, these bloody English, bursting with money and indigestion, because he comes from Oxford. You know, Dedalus, you have the real Oxford manner. He can't make you out. Oh, my name for you is the best. Kinch, the knife blade. He shaved warily over his chin. He was raving all night about a Black Panther, Stephen said. Where is his gun case? A woeful lunatic. Were you in a funk? Well, I was, Stephen said with energy and growing fear. Out here in the dark with a man I don't know, raving and moaning to himself about shooting a Black Panther. You saved men from drowning. I'm not a hero, however. If he stays on here, I am off. Buck Mulligan frowned at the lather on his razor blade. He hopped down from his perch and began to search his trouser pockets hastily. Scutter! He cried thickly. He came over to the gun rest and, thrusting a hand into Stephen's upper pocket, said, Lend us a loan of your nose rag to wipe my razor. Stephen suffered him to pull out and hold up on show by its corner a dirty, crumpled handkerchief. Buck Mulligan wiped the razor blade neatly. Then, gazing over the handkerchief, he said, The bard's nose rag, a new art colour for our Irish poet, snot green. You can almost taste it, can't you? He mounted to the parapet again and gazed out over Dublin Bay, his fair oak-pale hair stirring slightly. God, isn't the sea what Algy calls it? A grey, sweet mother. The snot-green sea, the stratum-tightening sea. Epi oinopa ponton. Ah, Dedalus, the Greeks. I must teach you. You must read them in the original. Thalata, Thalata. She is our great, sweet mother. Come and look. Stephen stood up and went over to the parapet. Leaning on it, he looked down on the water and on the mail boat clearing the harbour mouth of Kingstown. Our mighty mother, Buck Mulligan said. He turned abruptly his great searching eyes from the sea to Stephen's face. The aunt thinks you killed your mother. That's why she won't let me have anything to do with you. Someone killed her, Stephen said gloomily. You could have knelt down, damn it, Kinch, when your dying mother asked you. I'm Hyperborean as much as you, but to think of your mother begging you with her last breath to kneel down and pray for her, and you refused. There is something sinister in you. He broke off and lathered again lightly his farther cheek. A tolerant smile curled his lips. What a lovely mama, he murmured to himself. Kinch, the loveliest mama of them all. He shaved evenly and with care in silence, seriously. Stephen, an elbow rested on the jagged granite, leaned his palm against his brow and gazed at the fraying edge of his shiny black coat sleeve. Pain, that was not yet the pain of love, fretted his heart. Silently, in a dream, she had come to him after her death, her wasted body within its loose brown grave clothes giving off an odour of wax and rosewood, her breath that had been bent upon him, mute, reproachful, a faint odour of wetted ashes. Across the threadbare cuff edge, he saw the sea hailed as a great sweet mother by the well-fed voice beside him. The ring of bay and skyline held a dull green mass of liquid. A bowl of white china had stood beside her deathbed, holding the green sluggish bile which she had torn up from her rotting liver by fits of loud groaning vomiting. Buck Mulligan wiped again his razor blade. "Ah, poor dog's body. I must give you a shirt and a few nose rags. How are the second-hand breeks?" "Oh, they fit well enough," Stephen answered. Buck Mulligan attacked the hollow beneath his underlip. "The mockery of it. Second leg they should be. God knows what poxy bowsy left them off. I have a lovely pair with a hair stripe, grey. You'll look spiffing in them. I'm not joking, Kinch. You look damn well when you're dressed." "Thanks," Stephen said. "I can't wear them if they are grey." "He can't wear them," Buck Mulligan told his face in the mirror. "Etiquette is etiquette. He kills his mother, but he can't wear grey trousers." He folded his razor neatly, and with stroking pulps of fingers felt the smooth skin. Stephen turned his gaze from the sea and to the plump face with its smoke-blue mobile eyes. "That fellow I was with in the ship last night says you have GPI. He's up in Dottyville with Connolly Norman. General paralysis of the insane." He swept the mirror a half circle in the air to flash the tidings abroad in sunlight now radiant on the sea. His curling shaven lips laughed on the edges of his great white glittering teeth. Laughter seized all his strong, well-knit trunk. "Look at yourself, you dreadful bard." Stephen bent forward and peered at the mirror held out to him, cleft by a crooked crack, hair on end. "As he and others see me, who chose this face for me? This dog's body to rid of vermin? It asks me too." "I pinched it out of the skivvy's room. It does her all right. The aunt always keeps plain-looking servants for Malachi. Lead him not into temptation. And her name is Ursula." Laughing again, he brought the mirror away from Stephen's peering eyes. "The rage of Caliban at not seeing his face in a mirror. If Wilde were only alive to see you." Drawing back and pointing, Stephen said with bitterness, "It is a symbol of Irish art, the cracked looking-glass of a servant." Buck Mulligan suddenly linked his arm in Stephen's and walked with him round the tower, his razor and mirror clacking in the pocket where he had thrust them. "It's not fair to tease you like that, Kinch, is it? God knows you have more spirit than any of them." "Let Haynes stay," Stephen said. "There's nothing wrong with him except at night." "Well, then what is it? Cough it up. I'm quite frank with you. What have you got against me now?" They halted, looking towards the blunt cape of Bray Head that lay on the water like the snout of a sleeping whale. Stephen freed his arm quietly. "Do you wish me to tell you?" he asked. "Yes, what is it? I don't remember anything." He looked in Stephen's face as he spoke. A light wind passed his brow, fanning softly his fair, uncombed hair and stirring silver points of anxiety in his eyes. Stephen, depressed by his own voice, said, "Do you remember the first day I went to your house after my mother's death?" Buck Mulligan frowned quickly and said, "What,
Well, I can't remember anything. I remember only ideas and sensations. Why? What happened in the name of God?
You were making tea, Stephen said, and I went across the landing to get more hot water. Your mother and some visitor came out of the drawing room. She asked you who was in your room.
Yes, and what did I say? I forget.
You said, oh, it's only Daedalus, whose mother is beastly dead. A flush, which made him seem younger and more engaging, rose to Buck Mulligan's cheek.
Did I say that? Well, what harm's that?
He shook his constraint from him nervously.
And what is death, your mother's or yours or my own? You saw only your mother die. I see them pop off every day in the Martyr and Richmond and cut up into tripes in the dissecting room. It's a beastly thing and nothing else. It simply doesn't matter. You wouldn't kneel down to pray for your mother on her deathbed when she asked you. Why? Because you have the cursed Jesuit strain in you, only it's injected the wrong way. To me, it's all a mockery and beastly. Her cerebral lobes are not functioning. She calls the doctor Sir Peter Teasel and picks buttercups off the quilt. Humour her till it's over. You crossed her last wish in death, and yet you sulk with me because I don't whinge like some hired mute from Lalouette's. Absurd. I suppose I did say it. I didn't mean to offend the memory of your mother.
He had spoken himself into boldness. Stephen, shielding the gaping wounds which the words had left in his heart, said very coldly, I am not thinking of the events to my mother.
Of what then?
Of the offence to me. Buck Mulligan swung round on his heel.
Oh, an impossible person!
He walked off quickly round the parapet. Stephen stood at his post, gazing over the calm sea towards the headland. Sea and headland now grew dim. Pulses were beating in his eyes, veiling their sight, and he felt the fever of his cheeks. A voice within the tower called loudly,
Are you up there, Mulligan? I'm coming, Buck Mulligan answered.
He turned towards Stephen and said,
Look at the sea. What does it care about offences? Chuck Loyola, Kinch, and come on down. The Sassenach wants his morning rashers.
His head halted again for a moment at the top of the staircase, level with the roof.
Don't mope over it all day. I'm inconsequent. Give up the moody brooding.
His head vanished, but the drone of his descending voice boomed out of the stairhead.
And no more turn aside and brood upon life's bitter mystery, for Fergus rules the brazen cars.
Wood shadows floated silently by through the morning peace from the stairhead seaward where he gazed. Inshore and farther out, the mirror of water whitened, spurned by the light-shod hurrying feet. White breast of the dim sea. The twining stresses, two by two. A hand plucking the harp strings, merging their twining chords. Wave-white wedded words shimmering on the dim tide. A cloud began to cover the sun slowly, shadowing the bay in deeper green. It lay behind him, a bowl of bitter waters.
Thank you, Clyde. Our next section is Calypso. The time is 8 a.m., but we move towards just a little north of the center of Dublin. We are at number 7, Eccles Street. In the Leopold Bloom, an advertising canvasser for several newspapers, and his wife, the opera singer Marion Tweedy Bloom, known to her intimates as Molly. We are in the kitchen, the bedroom, and the butcher shop, where Leopold buys a pork kidney. On his way home, he notices a cloud in the sky, the first hint that the paths of Stephen and Leopold will cross today. Here too, there is water to hem things in. The Liffey to the south, the Royal Canal to the east, and the Blessington Basin to the north. Leopold fantasizes about traveling to the exotic realms of the Middle East. Is there a hint of escape here? Our next reader, Liam Phelan Cox, was born in Clonmel, County Tipperary, and schooled by Jesuits in London. He spent, or misspent, 49 years as a teacher and translator. He is a 45-year resident of Saint-Henri Park, a step away from the original Église des Irlandais in the Southwest. He remains a rebel. He has been a loyal reader of Ulysses scripts on Bloomsday. Liam, take it away.
Mr. Leopold Bloom ate with relish the inner organs of beasts and fowls. He liked thick giblet soup, nutty gizzards, a stuffed roast heart, liver slices fried with crust crumbs, fried head rolls. Most of all, he liked grilled mutton kidneys, which gave to his palate a fine tang of faintly scented urine. Kidneys were in his mind as he moved about the kitchen softly, writing her breakfast things on the humpy tray. Gelid light and air were in the kitchen, but out of doors, gentle summer morning everywhere. Made him feel a bit peckish. The coals were reddening. Another slice of bread and butter. 3, 4, right. She didn't like her plate full. Right. He turned from the tray, lifted the kettle off the hob, and set it sideways on the fire. It sat there dull and squat, its spout stuck out. Cup of tea soon. Good. Mouth dry. The cat walked stiffly round the leg of the table with tail on high. Oh, there you are, Mr. Bloom said, turning from the fire. The cat mewed in answer and stalked again stiffly round the leg of the table, mewing. Just how she stalks over my writing table. Scratch my head. Mr. Bloom watched curiously, kindly, the lithe black form. Clean to see, the gloss of her sleek hide, the white button under the butt of her tail, the green flashing eyes. He bent down to her, his hands on his knees. Milk for the pussons, he said. The cat cried. They call them stupid. They understand what we say better than we understand them. She understands all she wants to. Vindictive, too. Cruel. Her nature. Curious. Mice never squeal. Seem to like it. Wonder what I look like to her. Height of a tower? No, she can jump me. Afraid of the chickens she is, he said mockingly. Afraid of the chook-chooks. I never saw such a stupid pussons as the pussons. The cat said loudly. She blinked up out of her avid shame-closing eyes, mewing plaintively and long, showing him her milk-white teeth. He watched the dark eye slits narrowing with greed till her eyes were green stones. Then he went to the dresser, took the jug Hanlon's milkman had just filled for him, poured warm bubbled milk on a saucer, and set it slowly on the floor. "Oh!" she cried, running to lap. He watched the bristles shining wirily in the weak light as she tipped 3 times and licked gently. Wonder is it true, if you clip them they can't mouse after? Why? They shine in the dark, perhaps, the tips, or kind of feelers in the dark, perhaps. On the doorstep he felt in his hip pocket for the latchkey. Not there. In the trousers I left off. Must get it. A potato I have. Oh, creaky wardrobe. No use disturbing her. She turned over sleepily that time. He pulled the hall door to after him very quietly, more until the foot leaf dropped gently over the threshold, a limp lid. Looked shut. All right till I come back anyhow. He crossed to the bright side, avoiding the loose cellar flap of number 75. The sun was nearing the steeple of George's church. Be a warm day, I fancy. Especially in these black clothes. Feel it more. Black conducts, refracts, is it? The heat. But I couldn't go in that light suit. I'll make a picnic of it. His eyelids sank quietly often as he walked in happy warmth. Boland's bread van delivering with trays our daily, but she prefers yesterday's loaves, turnovers, crisp crowns, hot. Makes you feel young. He halted before Douglish's window, staring at the hanks of sausages, polonies, black and white. 15 multiplied by... The figures whitened in his mind, unsolved. Displeased, he let them fade. The shiny links, packed with force meat, fed his gaze, and he breathed in tranquilly the lukewarm breath of cooked, spicy pig's blood. Mr. Bloom pointed quickly to catch up and walk behind her if she went slowly, behind her moving hams. Pleasant to see, first thing in the morning. Hurry up, damn it. Make hay while the sun shines. She stood outside the shop in sunlight and sauntered lazily to the right. He sighed down his nose. They never understand. Soda-chapped hands. Crusted toenails, too. Brown scapulars in tatters, defending her both ways. The sting of disregard glowed to weak pleasure within his breast. For another, a constable off duty, cuddling her in Eccles Lane. They like them sizable, prime sausage. Oh, please, Mr. Policeman, I'm lost in the wood. Flappers, please, thank you, sir. Another time. 2 letters and a card laid on the hall table. He stooped and gathered them. Mrs. Marion Bloom. His quickened heart slowed at once. Bold hand, Mrs. Marion. Poldy! Entering the bedroom, he half closed his eyes and walked through warm yellow twilight towards her tousled head. Who are the letters for? He looked at them. Mullingar. Millie. A letter for me from Millie, he said carefully, and a card to you, and a letter for you. He laid her card and letter on the twill bedspread near the curve of her knees. Do you want the blind up? Letting the blind up by gentle tugs, halfway his backward eye saw her glance at the letter and tuck it under her pillow. That do? He asked, turning. She was reading the card, propped on her elbow. Oh, she got the things, she said. He waited till she had laid the card aside and curled herself back slowly with a snug sigh. Hurry up with that tea, she said. I'm parched. The kettle is boiling, he said. Well, scald the teapot. On the boil, sure enough. A plume of steam from the spout. He scalded and rinsed out the teapot and put in 4 full spoons of tea, tilting the kettle then to let the water flow in. Having set it to draw, he took off the kettle, crushed the pan flat on the live coals, and watched the lump of butter slide and melt. While he unwrapped the kidney, the cat mewed hungrily against him. Oh, give her too much meat, she won't mouse. Say they won't eat pork, eh, kosher. Here, He let the blood-smeared paper fall to her and dropped the kidney amid the sizzling butter sauce. Pepper, he sprinkled it through his fingers ringwise from the chipped egg cup. The tea was drawn. He filled his own mustache cup. Sham-crowned Darby, smiling. Silly Millie's birthday gift. Only 5 she was then. No, wait, 4. I gave her the amberoid necklace she broke, putting a piece of folded brown paper in the letterbox for her. He smiled, pouring. Oh, Millie Bloom, you are my darling. You are my looking glass from night to morning. I'd rather have you without a farthing than Katie Keogh with her ass and garden. He plodded a fork into the kidney and slapped it over, then fitted the teapot on the tray. Its hump bumped as he took it up. Everything on it. Bread and butter, 4. Sugar, spoon, her cream. Yes. He carried it upstairs, his thumb hooked in the teapot handle. Nudging the door open with his knee, he carried the tray in and set it on the chair by the bedhead. What a time you were, she said. She doubled a slice of bread into her mouth, asking, what time is the funeral? 11, I think, he answered. I didn't see the paper. There's a smell of burn, she said. Did you leave anything on the fire? Oh, the kidney, he cried suddenly.
Guramaragat, Liam. Thank you very much. We now move to section number 3. The time is 11 a.m. and the location is on the way to and at the Prospect Cemetery at Glasnevin. We've heard of the upcoming funeral of Paddy Dignam, an acquaintance of Leopold Bloom. When the mourners have jammed into the carriage, it sets off along Tritonville Road, passing Watery Lane and going over the Dodder River, the Grand Canal, and the Royal Canal. These have echoes of the 5 rivers in Hades, the Styx, the Acheron, the Cocytus, the Lethe, and the Phlegethon. Along the way, Stephen Dedalus is seen by those in the carriage. This is a time when the paths of Leopold and Stephen cross again without their meeting. Leopold thinks about his own son, Rudy, who died at 11 days old. Off they go to Prospect Cemetery, another place from which there is no escape. Our reader today is Pat Machin. When Pat decided to move from teaching in an elementary school to teaching in a high school, the principal of the latter asked the principal of the former what she should teach. Oh, she should teach English. She loves to read out loud. And that is how Pat got to be a high school English teacher. She still likes to read out loud. Pat Machin.
Martin Cunningham first poked his silk-hatted head into the creaking carriage and, entering deftly, seated himself. Mr. Power stepped in after him, curving his height with care. Come on, Simon. After you, Mr. Bloom said. Mr. Dedalus covered himself quickly and got in, saying, yes, yes. Are we all here now? Martin Cunningham asked. Come along, Bloom. Mr. Bloom entered and sat in the vacant place. He pulled the door to after him and slammed it tight till it shut tight. He passed an arm through the arm strap and looked seriously from the open carriage window at the lowered blinds of the avenue. one dragged aside, and an old woman peeping, nose white flattened against the pane. Thanking her stars she was passed over. Extraordinary, the interest they take in a corpse. Glad to see us go, it gave them such trouble coming. Job seems to suit them. Hugger-mugger in corners, slop about in slipper-slappers for fear he'd wake. Then getting it ready, laying it out, Molly and Mrs. Fleming making the bed. Put it more to your side, our winding sheet. Never know who will touch you dead. Wash and shampoo. I believe they clip the nails and the hair. Keep a bit in an envelope. Grow all the same. Unclean job. All waited, nothing was said. Stowing in the wreaths, probably. I'm sitting on something hard. Ah, that soap in my hip pocket. Better shift it out of that. Wait for an opportunity. All waited. Then wheels were heard from in front turning, then nearer, then horses' hoofs, a jolt. Their carriage began to move, creaking and swaying. Other hoofs and creaking wheels started behind. The blinds of the avenue passed, and number 9 with its crepe knocker door ajar. At walking pace. They waited still, their knees jocking, till they had turned and were passing along the tram tracks. Trittonville Road, quicker. The wheels rattled, rolling over the cobbled causeway, and the crazy glasses shook, rattling in the door frames. What way is he taking us? Mr. Power asked through both windows. Irish Town, Martin Cunningham said. Ringsend, Brunswick Street. Mr. Dedalus nodded, looking out. That's a fine old custom. I'm glad to see that it has not died out. All watched a while through their windows, caps and hats lifted by passers. Respect. The carriage swerved from the tram track to the smoother road past the watery lane. Mr. Bloom, at gaze, saw a lithe young man, clad in mourning, a wide hat. There's a friend of yours gone by, Dedalus, he said. Who's that? Your son and heir. Where is he? Mr. Dedalus stretching over across. The carriage, passing the open drains and mounds of ripped-up roadway before the tenement houses, lurched round the corner and, swerving back to the tram track, rolled on noisily with chattering wheels. Mr. Dedalus fell back, saying, was that Mulligan cad with him? His Fictus Atticus? No, Mr. Bloom said. He was alone. Mr. Bloom put his head out of the window. The Grand Canal. Gasworks. Whooping cough, they say it cures. Good job Millie never got it. Poor children. Doubles them up black and blue in convulsion. Shame, really. Got off lightly with illness compared. Only measles. Flaxseed tea. Scarlatina, influenza epidemics. Canvassing for dead. Don't miss this chance. Dog's home over there. Poor old Athos. Be good to Athos, Leopold, is my last wish. Thy will be done. We obey them in the grave. A dying scrawl. He took it to heart, pined away. Quiet brute. Old men's dogs usually are. A raindrop spat on his hat. He drew back and saw an instant of shower sprayed dots over the gray flags. Apart, curious. like through a colander. I thought it would rain. My boots were creaking. I remember now. The weather is changing. A pity it need not keep up fine. Wanted for the country. There's the sun coming out. Mr. Daedalus, peering through his glass towards the veiled sun, hurled a mute curse at the sky. It's as uncertain as a child's bottom. We're off again, said Cunningham. The carriage turned its stiff wheels, and their trunks swayed gently. Martin Cunningham twirled more quickly the peak of his beard. Tom Kennan was immense last night, and Paddy Leonard taking him off to his face. Oh, draw them out, Martin, Mr. Power said eagerly. Wait till you hear him, Simon, on Ben Dollard's singing of the Croppy Boy. Immense, Martin Cunningham said pompously. His singing of that simple ballad is the most trenchant rendering I have ever heard in the whole course of my experience. Trenchant, Mr. Power said, laughing. He's dead nuts on that. And the retrospective arrangement. They went past the bleak pulpit of St. Mark's, under the railway bridge, past the Queen's Theatre in silence. Hoardings, Eugene Stratton, Mrs. Brandman Palmer. Could I go to see Leah tonight, I wondered? Or the Lily of the Colony, Elster Grimes Opera Company? Big, powerful change. Wet, bright bills for next week. Fun on the Bristol. Martin Cunningham could work a pass for the Gaiety. Have to stand a drink or two, as broad as it's long. He's coming in the afternoon, her songs, Plastos. Sir Philip Crompton's memorial fountain bust. Who was he? How do you do? Martin Cunningham said, raising his palm to his brow in salute. He doesn't see us, Mr. Power said. Yes, he does. How do you do? Who? Mr. Daedalus asked. Blazes Boylan. There he is, airing his quiff. And that moment I was just thinking. Mr. Daedalus bent across to salute. From the door of the red bank, the white disk of a straw hat flashed reply. Passed. Mr. Bloom revealed the nails of his right hand and then those of his left. The nails, yes. Is there anything more in him that she sees? Fascination. Worst man in Dublin. That keeps him alive. They sometimes feel what a person is. Instinct. But a type like that, my nails. I was just looking at them, well paired. And after, thinking alone. Body getting a bit softy. I would notice that. Flesh falls off, but the shape is there. The shape is still there. Shoulders, hips, plump. Night of the dance dressing. Shift, stuck between the cheeks behind. He clasped his hands between his knees and, satisfied, sent his vacant glance over their faces. Mr. Powers asked, how's the concert tour going on, Bloom? Oh, very well, Mr. Bloom said. I hear great accounts of it. It's a good idea, you see. Are you going yourself? No, Mr. Bloom said. In point of fact, I have to go down to the County Clare on some private business. You see, the idea is to tour the chief towns. What you lose in one, you can make up on the other. Quite so, Martin Cunningham said. Mary Anderson is up there now. Have you good artists? Louis Werner is turning her, Mr. Bloom said. Oh, yes. We'll have all top nobbers, J.C. Doyle and John McCormick, I hope, and the best, in fact. And Madam, Mr. Power said, smiling. Last but not least. The carriage rattled swiftly along Blessington Street, over the stones. We're going apace, I think, Martin Cunningham said. God grant he doesn't upset us on the road, Mr. Power said. I hope not. There will be a great race tomorrow in Germany, the Gordon Bennett. Yes, by Jove, Mr. Dedalus said. That will be worth seeing, Faith. As they turned into Berkeley Street, a street organ near the basin sent over and after them a rollicking, rattling song of the halls. Has anybody here seen Kelly? Kewey. Dead March from Saul. He's as bad as old Antonio. He left me on my onio. The Mater Misericordiae. Eccles Street. My house down there, big place. Ward for incurables there. Very encouraging. Our Lady's Hospice for the Dying. Dead house, half handy, underneath, where old Mrs. Riordan died. They looked terrible, the women, her feeding cup and rubbing her mouth with the spoon, and then the screen round her bed for her to die. Nice young student that was, just that bite the bee gave me. He's gone over to the lying-in hospital, they told me, from one extreme to the other. The mutes shouldered the coffin and bore it in through the gates. So much dead weight. Felt heavier myself stepping out of the bath. First the stiff, then the friends of the stiff. Corny Kelleher and the boy followed with their wreaths. Who is that beside them? Oh, the brother-in-law. All walked after. They halted above the door of the mortuary chapel. Mr. Bloom stood behind the boy with the wreath, looking down at his sleek combed hair and the slender furrowed neck inside his brand new collar. Poor boy. Was he there when the father, both unconscious, lighten up at the last moment and recognize for the last time all he might have done? I owe 3 shillings to O'Grady. Would he understand? The mutes bore the coffin into the chapel. Which end is his head? After a moment, he followed the others in, blinking at the screened lights. The coffin lay on its bier before the chancel, 4 tall yellow candles at its corner. Always in front of us. Corny Kelleher, lying a wreath at each 4 corner, beckoned the boy to kneel. The mourners knelt here and there in praying desks. Mr. Bloom stood behind near the font and, when all had knelt, dropped carefully his unfolded newspaper from his pocket and knelt his right knee upon it. He fitted his black hat gently on his left knee and, holding its brim, bent over piously. A server, bearing a brass bucket with something in it, came out through the door. The white-smocked priest came after him, tidying his stole with one hand, balancing with other a little book against his toad's belly. Who'll read the book? I, said the rook. They halted by the bier, and the priest began to read the book with a fluent croak. Father Coffey. I knew his name was like coffin. Domini, Domini. Bully about the muzzle. He looks, bosses the show. Muscular Christian. Woe betide anyone that looks crooked at him. Priest, thou art Peter. Burst sideways like a sheep in clover, Dedalus says he will, with a belly on him like a poisoned pup. Most amusing expression that man finds. Burst sideways. Non intris and judicum cum servitudo domini. Makes them feel more important to be prayed over in Latin. Requiem Mass, crepe weepers, black-edged notebook, your name on the altar list. Chilly place this, want to feed well, sitting in there all the morning in the gloom, kicking his heels, waiting for the next please. Eyes of a toad, too. What swells him up that way? Molly gets swelled up after cabbage. Air of the place, maybe. Looks full up of bad gas. Must be an infernal lot of bad gas round this place. Butchers, for instance, they get like raw beefsteaks. Who's telling me? Oh, Mervyn Brown, down in the vaults of St. Werburgh's. Lovely old organ, 150. They have to bore a hole in the coffins sometimes to let out the bad gas and burn it. Out it rushes blue. One whiff of that and you're a goner. My kneecap is hurting me. That's better. The priest took a stick with a knob at the end of it out of the boy's bucket and shook it over the coffin. Then he walked to the end and shook it again. Then he came back and put it back in the bucket. As you were before you rested, it's all written down. He has to do it. Et nos inducas in tantianum. The server piped the answers in the treble. I often thought it would be better to have boy servants, up to 15 or so. After that, of course. Holy water that was, I expect, shaking sleep out of it. He must be fed up with that job, shaking that thing over all the corpses they trot up. What harm if he could see what he was shaking it over? Every mortal day a fresh batch. Middle-aged men, old women, children, women dead in childbirth, men with beards, bald-headed businessmen, consumptive girls with little sparrows' breasts. All the year long, he prayed the same thing over them all and shook water on top of them. Sleep on dignum now. In paradisum. So he's going to paradise, or is in paradise. Says that over everybody. Tiresome kind of a job, but he has to say something. The priest closed his book and went off, followed by the server. Corny Kelleher opened the side doors, and the grave diggers came in, hoisted the coffin again, carried it out, and shoved it on their cart. Corny Kelleher gave one wreath to the boy and one to the brother-in-law. All of them followed out of the side doors into the mid-grey air. Mr. Bloom came last, folding his paper again into his pocket. He gazed gravely at the ground till the coffin cart wheeled off to the left. The metal wheels ground the gravel with a sharp, grating sound, and the pack of blunt boots followed the barrel along a lane of sepulchres. The ree, the ra, the fee, the ra, the roo, Lord, I mustn't live here.
Thank you very much, Pat. That was very good. Thank you. We move on now to section number 4 for today. Aeolus. The time is now 12 o'clock noon. The location is in the newspaper office of the Freeman's Journal and the Evening Telegraph, situated at numbers 4 to 8, Princes Street North, in the northern quadrant of Dublin, near the General Post Office and Nelson's Pillar. Leopold has a client, Alexander Keyes, grocer, tea and wine merchant, for whom he is trying to place an ad. He has an idea of what the text will be, but he needs to find the graphic, 2 crossed keys, to accompany it. Leopold wanders through the maze of offices in the building to make his request, but will he locate the keys to find his way out of this problem? Doors open and close, winds blow through, and there is the thundering sound of the presses which fills the air. The thudding and thumping of the printing presses echoes the sound of the blood flowing in the circulatory system, another closed system reminding us of the limitations imposed by the physical and psychological landscapes of our characters. In this section, we have several persons. We have Leopold Bloom, Red Murray, we have headlines, we have Nanetti, the foreman, we have Hines, Aeolus. In the heart of the Hibernian metropolis, Nelson's Pillar, trams slowed, changed, trolley, started for Blackrock, Kingston and Dalkey, Clonsky, Rathgar and Terranure, Palmerston Park and Upper Rathmines, Sandymount Green, Rathmines Ringsend and Sandymount Tower, Harold's Cross, the Horse Dublin United Tramways timekeeper bawled them off. Rathgar and Terranure, come on, Sandymount Green. Right and parallel, clanging and ringing, a double-decker and a single-deck, moved from their railheads, swerved to the down line, glided, parallel. Start, Palmerston Park, the wearer of the crown. Under the porch of the General Post Office, shoeblacks called and polished, parked in North Princes Street, His Majesty's vermilion mail cars, bearing on their sides the royal initials, E.R., received loudly flung sacks of letters, postcards, letter cards, parcels, insured and paid for local, provincial, British, and overseas delivery. Gentlemen of the press, Mr. Drayman rolled barrels, dull thudding out of Prince's stores and bumped them up on the brewery float. On the brewery float bumped dull thudding barrels rolled by gross-booted draymen out of Prince's stores. There it is, Red Murray said. Alexander Keyes. Just cut it out, will you? Mr. Bloom said, and I'll take it round to the telegraph office. The door of Rutledge's office creaked again. Davy Stevens, minute in a large capecoat, a small felt hat crowning his ringlets, passed out with a roll of papers under his cape. A King's Courier. Red Murray's long shears sliced out the advertisement from the newspaper in 4 clean strokes, scissors and paste. I'll go through the printing works, Mr. Bloom said, taking the cut square. Of course, if he wants a par, Red Murray said earnestly, a pen behind his ear, we can do him one. Right, Mr. Bloom said with a nod. I'll rub that in. We. William Braden, Esquire, of Oakland's Sandymount. Red Murray touched Mr. Bloom's arm with the shears and whispered, Braden. Mr. Bloom turned and saw a reporter raise his lettered cap as a stately figure entered between the newsboards of the Weekly Freeman and National Press and the Freeman's Journal and National Press. Dull thudding Guinness barrels, it passed stately up the staircase, steered by an umbrella, a solemn, beard-framed face, the broadcloth back, ascended each step. Back. All his brains are in the nape of his neck, Simon Dedalus says. Welts of flesh behind on him. Fat, full of neck, fat neck, fat neck. Don't you think his face is like our Savior? Red Murray whispered. The door of Rutledge's office whispered. They always build one door opposite another for the wind to way in, way out. Our Savior, beard-framed oval face, talking in the dusk. Mary, steered by an umbrella, soared to the footlights. Mario the tenor. Or like Mario, Mr. Bloom said. Yes, Mr. Murray agreed. But Mario was said to be the picture of our Savior. Jesus, Mario, with rougy cheeks, doublet and spindle legs, hand on his heart in Martha. Come thou lost one, come thou dear one. The crozier and the pen. His Grace phoned down twice this morning, Red Murray said gravely. They watched the knees, legs, boots vanish. Neck? A telegram boy stepped in nimbly, threw an envelope on the counter, and stepped off post-haste with a word. Freeman, Mr. Bloom said slowly. Well, he is one of our saviors also. A meek smile accompanied him as he lifted the counterflap, as he passed in through the side door and along the warm, dark stairs and passage, along the now reverberating boards. But will he save the circulation? Thumping, thumping. He pushed in the glass swing door and entered, stepping over strewn packing paper. Through a lane of clanking drums, he made his way towards Nanetti's reading closet. With unfeigned regret, he announced the of most respected Dublin Burgess. Hines here too. Count of the funeral, probably. Thumping, thump. This morning, the remains of the late Mr. Patrick Dignam. Machines smash a man to atoms if they got a hold of him. Rule the world today. His machineries are pegging away too, like these, got out of hand, fermenting. Work away, tearing away, and that old gray rat tearing to get in. How a daily organ is turned out. Mr. Bloom halted behind the foreman's spare body, admiring a glossy crown. Strange, he never saw his real country, Ireland, my country. Member for College Green, he boomed that workaday worker tack for all it was worth. It's the ads and side features sell a weekly, not the stale news in the official gazette. Queen Anne is dead, published by authority in the year 1000 and demesne, situate in the townland of Rosenalis, barony of Tinnacahinch, to all whom it may concern, scheduled pursuant to statute, owing return of number of mules and jennets exported from Ballina, nature notes, cartoons, Phil Blake's Weekly, Pat and Bull Story, Uncle Toby's page for tiny tots, country bumpkins queries. Dear Mr. Editor, what is a good cure for flatulence? I'd like that part. Learn a lot teaching others. The personal note, M.A.P., mostly all pictures. Shapely bathers on Golden Strand, world's biggest balloon, double marriage of sisters celebrated, two bridegrooms laughing heartily at each other. Cuprani, too, printer, more Irish than the Irish. The machines clanked in 3/4 time. Thump, thump, thump. Now, if he got paralyzed there and no one knew how to stop them, they'd clank on and on the same, printed over and over and up and back. Monkey doodle the whole thing. Want a cool head. Well, we'll get it into the evening edition, Counselor, Hines said. Soon be calling him Lord Mayor. Lon John is backing him, they say. The foreman, without answering, scribbled press on a corner of the sheet and made a sign to a typesetter. He handed the sheet silently over the dirty glass screen. Right, thanks, Hines said, moving off. Mr. Bloom stood in his way. If you want to draw, the cashier is just going to lunch, he said, pointing backwards with his thumb. Did you? Mr. Bloom said. Look sharp and you'll catch him. Thanks, old man, Hines said. I'll tap him too. He hurried on eagerly towards the Freeman's Journal. 3 bob I lent him in Mars 3 weeks ago. Third hint. We see the canvasser at work. Mr. Bloom laid his cutting on Mr. Nanetti's desk. Excuse me, Counselor, he said. This ad, you see? Keys, you remember? Mr. Nanetti considered the cutting a while and nodded. He wants it in for July, Mr. Bloom said. He doesn't hear it. Nanan. Iron nerves. The foreman moved his pencil towards it. But wait, Mr. Bloom said. He wants it changed. Keys, you see. He wants 2 keys at the top. Hell of a racket they make. Maybe he understands what The foreman turned round to hear patiently, and lifting an elbow, began to scratch slowly in the armpit of his jacket. Like that, Mr. Bloom said, crossing his forefinger at the top. Let him take that in first. Mr. Bloom, glancing sideways up from the cross he had made, saw the sallow face. Think he has a touch of jaundice. And beyond the obedient reels feeding in huge webs of paper. Clank it, miles of it, unreeled. What becomes of it after? Oh, wrap up meat, parcels, uses, 1,001 things. Slipping his words deftly into the pauses of the clanking, he drew swiftly on the scarred woodwork. House of Keys, like that, see? 2 crossed keys, a circle. Then here, the name Alexander Keys, tea, wine, and spirit merchant, so on. Better not teach him his own business. You know yourself, Counselor, just what he wants, then round the top, in leaded, the House of Keys, you see? You think that's a good idea? The foreman moved his scratch hand to his lower rib. There. Quiet. The idea, Mr. Bloom said, is the House of Keys. You know, Counselor, the Manx Parliament. Innuendo of Home Rule. Tourist, you know, from the Isle of Man. Catches the eye. Can you do that? I could ask him, perhaps, about how to pronounce that voglio. But then, if he didn't know, only make it awkward for him. Better not. We can do that, the foreman said. Have you the design? I can get it, Mr. Bloom said. It was in a Kilkenny. He has a house there too. I'll just run out and ask him. Well, you can do that and just a little par calling attention. You know, the usual. High-class licensed premises, long felt want. The foreman thought for an instant. "We can do that," he said. "Let him give us 3 months renewal." A typesetter brought him a limp galley page. He began to check it silently. Mr. Bloom stood by, hearing the loud throbs of cranks, watching the silent typesetters at their cases. Orthographical. Want to be sure of his spelling. Proof fever. Martin Cunningham gave us his spelling bee conundrum this morning. It is amusing to view the unpar, 1 R, alleled, embara, 2 Rs, is it? Double S, ment of a harassed peddler while gauging, AU, the symmetry of a peeled pear under a symmetry wall. Silly, isn't it? Cemetery put in, of course, on account of the symmetry. I could, when he clapped on his topper. Thank you. I ought to have said something about an old hat or something. No, I could have said, looks as good as new now. See his fizz then. Slipped! The nethermost deck of the first machine jogged forward, its flyboard with slipped. The first batch of choir-folded papers slipped among the human way. It slipped to call attention, doing its level best to speak. The door, too, slipped, creaking, asking to be shut. Everything speaks in its own way. Slipped. The end. Chapter 5. Nausicaa. The time is 8 p.m. Is the rocks on Sandymount Strand, near Leahy's Terrace. Nearby is the Church of Mary, Star of the Sea, the parish church of the late Paddy Dignam, where a temperance retreat is in progress. The patroness of water is being invoked in a battle against another kind of water. There is water, water everywhere, but the participants are not up to drink. Leopold is sitting on a rock after visiting Mrs. Dignam, while not far away sits Gertie McDowell, accompanied by Sissy Caffrey and some small children playing in the sand. Gertie, an avid reader of ladies' novels and magazines, is firmly fixated on romance and on Leopold Bloom. Like Nausicaa, who tried to prevent Ulysses leaving her island, Gertie's long-distance efforts have an effect on Leopold, but eventually come to naught. There are fireworks, but the spectacle soon fades. Stagnation regains its hold on Leopold. Gertie has other plans for herself. Our reader today is Maurice Podbury, who was born in Durban, South Africa, and educated at the University of Witwatersrand, the Teachers Training College, Johannesburg, and the Ruth Bruford College of Speech and Drama in England. He was the founding director of the Centaur Theatre Company in Montreal from 1969 until 1997, when he returned to South Africa. Maurice has been a member of the Order of Canada since 1993, received an honorary doctorate from Cork University in 1995. He has received a Canadian government diploma for his efforts in strengthening cultural relations between South Africa and Canada in 2008. Our reader, Maurice Podbury. Welcome, Maurice.
The summer evening had begun to fold the world in its mysterious embrace. Far away in the west, the sun was setting, and the last glow lingered lovingly on Sion Strand, on the proud promontory of dear old Howth, guarding as ever the waters of the bay, on the weed-grown rocks along Sandymount shore, and last but not least on the quiet church, whence there streamed forth at times the voice of prayer to her who is a beacon ever to the storm-tossed heart of man, Mary, Star of the Sea. The three girl-friends were seated on the rocks, enjoying the evening scene, and the air, which was fresh but not too chilly. Many a time and after they were to come there, to that favourite nook, to have a cosy chat beside the sparkling waves and discuss matters feminine. Sissy Caffrey and Edie Boardman with the baby in the pushcart, and Tommy and Jackie Caffrey, two little curly-headed boys dressed in sailor suits with caps to match. Tommy and Jackie Caffrey were twins, scarce 4 years old and very noisy and spoiled, but for all that, darling little fellows with bright merry faces and endearing ways about them. They were dabbling in the sand with their spades and buckets, building castles as children do, or playing with a big coloured ball, happy as the day was long. And Edie Boardman was rocking the chubby baby to and fro in the pushcart, while that young gentleman fairly chuckled with delight. He was but 11 months and 9 days old, and though still a tiny toddler, was just beginning to lisp his first babyish words. Gertie McDowell, who was seated near her companions, lost in thought, gazing far away into the distance, was in truth as fair a specimen of winsome Irish girlhood as one could wish to see. She was pronounced beautiful by all who knew her. Her figure was slight and graceful, inclining even to fragility. Those iron jelloids she'd been taking of late had done her a world of good. The waxen pallor of her face was almost spiritual. Her hands were of finely veined alabaster, with tapering fingers, and as white as lemon juice and queen ointment could make them, though it was not true that she used to wear kid gloves in bed, or take a milk foot bath either. Bertha Supple had told that once to Edie Boardman, a deliberate lie. And when she was at daggers drawn with Gertie, the girl chums had, of course, their little tiffs from time to time, like the rest of mortals, and she told her not to let on it was her, or she'd never speak to her again. No. There was a refinement, a languid, queenly hauteur about Gertie. Had kind fate but willed her to be born a gentlewoman of high degree, and had she only received the benefit of a good education, Gertie McDowell might easily have held her own beside any lady in the land, and have seen herself exquisitely gowned with jewels on her brow, and patrician suitors at her feet, vying with one another to pay their devoirs to her. Maybe it was this, the love that might have been, that lent to her face a look tense with suppressed meaning, and imparted to her beautiful eyes a charm few could resist. Madcap Sis with her gollywog curls. You had to laugh at her sometimes. For instance, when she asked you, would you have some more Chinese tea with jazzberry ram? And when she drew the men's faces on her nails with red ink, make you split your sides. And will you ever forget the evening she dressed up in her father's suit and hat with a burnt cork moustache and walked down Tritonville Road smoking a cigarette? There was none to come up to her for fun, but she was sincerity itself, one of the bravest and truest hearts heaven ever made. And there came out upon the air the sound of voices and the pealing anthem of the organ. It was the men's temperance retreat, conducted by the missioner, the Reverend John Hughes, S.J. How sad to poor Gertie's ears. Had her father only avoided the clutches of the demon drink by taking the pledge, she might now be rolling in her carriage, second to none. But that vile decoction which had ruined so many hearths and homes had cast a shadow over her childhood days. Nay, she had even witnessed in the home circle deeds of violence caused by intemperance, and had seen her own father, a prey to the fumes of intoxication, forget himself completely. For there was one thing that Gertie knew. It was the man who lifts his hand to a woman, save in the way of kindness, deserves to be branded as the lowest of the low. Gertie was just like a second mother in the house, a ministering angel. And when her mother had those raging, splitting headaches, who was it rubbed the menthol cone on her forehead? But Gertie didn't like her mother taking pinches of snuff, and that was the only single thing they ever had words about, taking snuff. The twins were now playing in the most approved brotherly fashion, till at last Master Jackie deliberately kicked the ball as hard as ever he could down towards the seaweedy rocks. Needless to say, poor Tommy was not slow to voice his dismay, but luckily the gentleman in black who was sitting there by himself came gallantly to the rescue and intercepted the ball. Our two champions claimed their plaything with lusty cries, and to avoid trouble, Sissy Caffrey called to the gentleman to throw it to her, please. The gentleman aimed the ball once or twice, and then threw it up the strand towards Sissy Caffrey, but it rolled down the slope and stopped right under Gertie's skirt, near the little pool by the rock. The twins clamored again for it, and Sissy told her to kick it away and let them fight for it. So Gertie drew back her foot, and she gave a kick, but she missed, and Edie and Sissy laughed. Gertie wished to goodness they would take their squealing baby home. She gazed out towards the distant sea, and while she gazed, her heart went pitter-pat. Yes, it was her he was looking at, and there was meaning in his look. His eyes burnt into her as though they would search her through and through and read her very soul. Wonderful eyes they were, superbly expressive, but would you trust them? People were so queer. She could see at once by his dark eyes and his pale intellectual face that he was a foreigner. He was in deep mourning, she could see that, and the story of a haunting sorrow was written on his face. She would have given worlds to know what it was. He was looking up so intently, so still, and he saw her kick the ball, and perhaps he could see the bright steel buckles of her shoes. Here was that of which he had so often dreamed. It was he who mattered, and there was joy in her face because she wanted him, because she felt instinctively that he was her like no one else. The very heart of the girl-woman went out to him, her dream husband, because she knew on the instant it was him. If he had suffered more, sinned against than sinning, or even if he had been himself a sinner, a wicked man, she cared not. Even if he was a Protestant or Methodist, she could convert him easily if he truly loved her. She was a womanly woman, not like other flighty girls, unfeminine he had known, those cyclists showing off what they hadn't got. And she just yearned to know all, to forgive all if she could make him fall in love with her, make him forget the memory of the past. Then mayhap he would embrace her gently like a real man, crushing her soft body to him and love her, his ownest girlie, for himself alone. She wished to goodness they'd take the snotty-nosed twins and the baby home, and she just gave a gentle hint about it being late. And when Sissy came up, Edie asked her what the time was, and Miss Sissy, as good as you like, said it was past kissing time, time to kiss again. But Edie wanted to know because they were told to be in early. Wait, says Sissy. I'll ask my Uncle Peter over there what's the time by his conundrum. So over she went, and when he saw her coming, she could see him take his hand out of his pocket, getting nervous, and beginning to play with his watch chain. Sissy said to excuse her. Would he mind telling her what was the right time? And Gertie could see him taking out his watch, listening to it, and looking up, and clearing his throat, and he said he was very sorry his watch was stopped, but he thought it must be after 8 because the sun was set. His voice had a cultured ring in it, and though he spoke in measured accents, there was a suspicion of a quiver in the mellow tones, Sissy said thanks and came back with her tongue out and said, Uncle said his waterworks were out of order. How moving the scene there in the gathering twilight. The last glimpse of Erin, the touching chime of those evening bells, and at the same time a bat flew forth from the ivied belfry, through the dusk, hither, thither, with a tiny lost cry. Soon the lamplighter would be going his rounds, past the Presbyterian church grounds and along by shady Tritonville Avenue, where the couples walked, and lighting the lamp near her window. If she saw that magic lure in his eyes, there would be no holding her back. Love laughs at locksmiths. She would make the great sacrifice. Her every effort would be to share his thoughts. Dearer than the whole world would she be to him, and gild his days with happiness. There was the all-important question, and she was dying to know, was he a married man or a widower who had lost his wife? Or some tragedy, like the nobleman with the foreign name from the land of song, had to have her put in a madhouse, cruel and to be kind? But even if, what then? Would it make a very great difference? Perhaps it was an old flame he was in mourning for, from the days beyond recall. She thought she understood. She would try to understand him, because men were so different. The old love was waiting with little white hands stretched out, with blue appealing eyes. Heart of mine, she would follow her dream of love, the dictates of her heart that told her he was her all in all, the only man in all the world for her. Her love was the master guide. Nothing else mattered. Come what might, she would be wild, untrammeled, free.
Thank you very much, Morris. We now go to reading number 6, Ithaca. The time is 2 a.m. on June 17th, 1904. The place is number 7, Eccles Street, the residence of Leopold Bloom. After rescuing Stephen from the misadventures in Bella Cohen's brothel and stopping at the cabman's shelter to try to get him to eat and drink something to sober him up, Leopold takes Stephen home and tries to convince him to stay. The father, in search for a son, and the son without a father, finally sit down in a safe and quiet place to talk. The action is recounted in a series of questions and answers, much like a catechetical examination or even a press conference. We get to know more of the psychological workings of both Leopold and Stephen from a more objective point of view. This section was originally intended to be the end story. However, in the next part, Molly gets the last word. Our readers today are Susan Gilmore and Alan Lombard. Susan Gilmore has loved all things theatrical ever since the age of 6, when she played a most threatening spider to little Miss Muffet as she sat on her tuffet. Over the years, Susan Gilmore has been involved in a number of community productions, including variety shows, stage plays, radio plays, and dramatic readings. She has performed with the Montreal Bloomsday Group since its inception outdoors at McGill University in 2012. The global Bloomsday reading of Ulysses in 2013 was a highlight, bringing together the world in a reading of the complete text. For the additional year, her husband, Alan Lombard, has agreed to read the role of the questioner for this performance. Greater love hath no man. Susan will be reading from a section from Ulysses in a cross-Canada production this evening, sponsored by the Embassy of Ireland. I imagine that Alan will be there as well. Susan, Alan, take it away.
What parallel courses did Bloom and Stephen follow returning?
Starting united, both at normal walking pace from Beresford Place, they followed in the order named Lower and Middle Gardiner Streets and Mountjoy Square West. Then, at reduced pace, each bearing left, Gardiner's Place by an inadvertence as far as the farther corner of Temple Street. Then, at reduced pace with interruptions of halt, bearing right, Temple Street North as far as Hardwood Place. Approaching, disparate, at relaxed walking pace, they crossed both the Circus before George's diametrically, the chord in any circle being less than the arc which it subtends.
Of what did the triumvirate deliberate during their itinerary?
Music, literature, Ireland, Dublin, Paris, friendship, woman, prostitution, diet, the influence of a gaslight or the light of arc and glow lamps on the growth of adjoining paraheliotropic trees, exposed corporation emergency dust buckets, the Roman Catholic Church, ecclesiastical celibacy, the Irish nation, Jesuit education, careers, the study of medicine, the past day, the maleficent influence of the pre-Sabbath, Stephen's collapse.
Did Bloom discover common factors of similarity between their respective like and unlike reactions to experience?
Well, both were sensitive to artistic impressions, musical in preference to plastic or pictorial. Both preferred a continental to an insular manner of life, a cisatlantic to a transatlantic place of residence. Both indurated by early domestic training and an inherited tenacity of heterodox resistance, profess their disbelief in many orthodox religious, national, social, and ethical doctrines. Both admitted the alternately stimulating and obtunding influence of heterosexual magnetism.
Were their views on some points divergent?
Well, Stephen dissented openly from Bloom's views on the importance of dietary and civic self-help, while Bloom dissented tacitly from Stephen's views on the eternal affirmation of the spirit of man in literature. Bloom assented covertly to Stephen's rectification of the anachronism involved in assigning the date of the conversion of the Irish nation to Christianity from Druidism by Patrick, son of Calpurnius, son of Potitus, son of Odysseus, sent by Pope Celestine I in the year 432 in the reign of Leary to the year 260 or thereabouts in the reign of Cormac MacCart, died 266 AD, suffocated by imperfect deglutition of aliment at Sletty and interred at Rossnaree. The collapse, which Bloom ascribed to gastric inanition and certain chemical compounds of varying degrees of adulteration and alcoholic strength, accelerated by mental exertion and the velocity of rapid circular motion in a relaxing atmosphere. Stephen attributed to the reapparition of a matutinal cloud perceived by both from two different points of observation, Sandy Cove and Dublin, at first no bigger than a woman's hand.
Was there one point on which their views were equal and negative?
The influence of gaslight or electric light on the growth of adjoining paraheliotropic trees.
What act did Bloom make on their arrival at their destination?
At the house steps of the fourth of the equidifferent uneven numbers, number 7 Eccles Street, he inserted his hand mechanically into the back pocket of his trousers to obtain his latchkey.
Was it there?
It was in the corresponding pocket of the trousers which he had worn on the day but one preceding.
Why was he doubly irritated?
Because he had forgotten, and because he remembered that he had reminded himself twice not to forget.
What were then the alternatives before the premeditatively, irrespectively, and inadvertently keyless couple?
To enter or not to enter, to knock or not to knock.
Bloom's decision?
A stratagem. Resting his feet on the dwarf wall, he climbed over the area railings, compressed his hat on his head, grasped 2 points at the lower union of rails and stiles, lowered his body gradually by its length of 5 feet 9 inches and a half to within 2 feet 10 inches of the area pavement, and allowed his body to move freely in space by separating himself from the railings and crouching in preparation for the impact of the fall.
Did he rise uninjured by concussion?
Regaining new stable equilibrium, he rose uninjured, though concussed by the impact, raised the latch of the area door by the exertion of force at its freely moving flange, and by leverage of the first kind applied at its fulcrum, gained retarded access to the kitchen through the subadjacent scullery, ignited a lucifer match by friction, set free inflammable coal gas by turning on the ventcock, lit a high flame which by regulating he reduced to quiescent incandescence, and lit finally a portable candle.
Did the man reappear elsewhere?
After a lapse of 4 minutes, the glimmer of his candle was discernible through the semi-transparent, semicircular glass fanlight over the hall door. The hall door turned gradually on its hinges. In the open space of the doorway, the man reappeared without his hat, with his candle.
Did Stephen obey his sign?
Yes. Entering softly, he helped to close and chain the door and followed softly along the hallway the man's back and listed feet, and lighted candle past a lighted crevice of doorway on the left and carefully down a turning staircase of more than 5 steps into the kitchen of Bloom's house.
What did Bloom see on the range?
On the right, smaller hob, a blue enameled saucepan. On the left, larger hob, a black iron kettle.
What did Bloom do at the range?
He removed the saucepan to the left hob, rose and carried the iron kettle to the sink in order to tap the current by turning the faucet to let it flow.
Having set the half-filled kettle on the now burning coals, why did he return to the still flowing tap?
To wash his soiled hands with a partially consumed tablet of Barrington's lemon-flavored soap, to which paper still adhered, bought 13 hours previously for 4d and still unpaid for, in fresh, cold, never-changing, ever-changing water, and dry them, face and hands, in a long red-bordered Holland cloth passed over a wooden revolving roller.
What reason did Stephen give for declining Bloom's offer?
That he was hydrophobe, hating partial contact by immersion or total by submersion in cold water, his last bath having taken place in the month of October of the preceding year. Disliking the aqueous substances of glass and crystal, distrusting of quasities of thought and language.
What impeded Bloom from giving Stephen counsels of hygiene and prophylactic, to which should be added suggestions concerning a preliminary wetting of the head and contraction of the muscles with rapid splashing of the face and neck, and thoracic and epigastric region in case of sea or river bathing, the parts of the human anatomy most sensitive to cold being the nape, stomach, and the nar or sole of foot.
The incompatibility of aquacity with the erratic originality of genius.
What additional didactic counsels did he similarly repress?
Dietary, concerning the respective percentage of protein and caloric energy in bacon, salt ling, and butter, the absence of the former in the last named, and the abundance of the latter in the first named.
Which seemed to the host to be the predominant qualities of his guest?
Confidence in himself, an equal and opposite power of abandonment and recuperation.
What is home without Plumtree's potted meat?
Incomplete. With it, an abode of bliss. Manufactured by George Plumtree, 23 Merchants Quay, Dublin, put up in 4-ounce pots and inserted by Councillor Joseph P. Nanetti, MP, Rotunda Ward, 19 Hardwick Street, under the obituary notices and anniversaries of deceases. The name on the label is Plumtree, a plum tree in a meat pot, registered trademark. Beware of imitations, Piedmont, Trumpley, Mountpat, I am true.
In what order of precedence, with what attendant ceremony, was the exodus from the house of bondage to the wilderness of inhabitation effected?
Lighted candle in stick borne by Bloom, diaconal hat on ash plant borne by Stephen.
What did each do at the door of egress?
Bloom set the candlestick on the floor. Stephen put the hat on his head.
For what creature was the door of egress a door of ingress?
For a cat.
What spectacle confronted them when they, first the host, then the guest, emerged silently, doubly dark, from obscurity by a passage from the rear of the house into the penumbra of the garden?
The heaven tree of stars hung with humid night blue fruit.
What visible luminous sign attracted Bloom's, who attracted Stephen's, gaze?
In the second story, rear of his Bloom's house, the light of a paraffin oil lamp with oblique shade projected on a screen of roller blind supplied by Frank O'Hara. Window blind, curtain pole, and revolving shutter manufacturer, 16 Onger Street.
How did he elucidate the mystery of an invisible attractive person, his wife, Marion Molly Bloom, denoted by a visible splendid sign, a lamp?
With indirect and direct verbal allusions or affirmations, with subdued affection and admiration, with description, with impediment, with suggestion.
Both then were silent.
Silent, each contemplating the other in both mirrors of the reciprocal flesh of their his, not his fellow faces.
Were they indefinitely inactive?
At Stephen's suggestion, at Bloom's instigation, both, first Stephen, then Bloom, in penumbra urinated, their sides contiguous, their organs of micturition reciprocally rendered invisible by manual circumposition, their gazes, first Bloom's, then Stephen's, elevated to the projected luminous and semi-luminous shadow.
How did the centripetal remainer afford egress to the centrifugal departer?
Well, by asserting the barrel of an originated male key in the hole of an unstable female lock, obtaining a purchase on the bow of the key and turning its ward from right to left, withdrawing a boat from its stable, pulling inward spasmodically an obsolescent unhinged door and revealing an aperture for free egress and free ingress.
How did they take leave, one of the other, in separation?
Standing perpendicular at the same door and on different sides of its base, the lines of their valedictory arms meeting at any point and forming any angle less than the sum of two right angles.
What sound accompanied the union of their tangent, the disunion of their respectively centrifugal and centripetal hands?
The sound of the peal of the hour of the night by the chime of the bells in the church of St. George.
What echoes of that sound were by both and each heard?
By Stephen, Liliata rutilantium turma circumdet, jubilatium te virginum chorus accipiat. By Bloom, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho, hey ho.
Alone, what did Bloom hear?
The double reverberation of retreating feet on the heaven-born earth, the double vibration of a Jew's harp in the resonant lane.
What prospect of what phenomena inclined him to remain?
The disparition of three final stars, the diffusion of daybreak, the apparition of a new solar disk.
Did he remain?
With deep inspiration, he returned, retraversing the garden, re-entering the passage, reclosing the door. With brief suspiration, he reassumed the candle, reascended the stairs, reapproached the door of the front room, hall floor, and re-entered.
What miscellaneous effects of female personal wearing apparel were perceived by him?
A pair of new, inodorous, half-silk black ladies' hose, a pair of new violet garters, a pair of outsized ladies' drawers of India mull cut on generous lines, redolent of Apopanax, jessamine, and Murati's Turkish cigarettes, and containing a long, bright steel safety pin, folded curvilinear, a camisole of batiste with thin lace border, an accordion underskirt of blue silk moirette. All these objects being disposed irregularly on the top of a rectangular trunk, quadruple battened, having capped corners with multicolored labels, initialed on its foreside in white lettering, BCT.
Brian Cooper Tweedy. Bloom's asked.
He deposited the article of clothing on a chair, removed his remaining articles of clothing, took from beneath the bolster at the head of the bed a folded long white nightshirt, inserted his head and arms into the proper apertures of the nightshirt, removed a pillow from the head to the foot of the bed, prepared the bed linen accordingly, and entered the bed.
How?
With circumspection, as invariably when entering an abode his own or not his own. With solicitude, the snake spiral springs of the mattress being old, the brass quoits and pendant viper radii loose and tremulous under stress and strain. Prudently as entering a lair or ambush of lust or adders, lightly the less to disturb. Reverently, the bed of conception and of birth, of consummation, of marriage and of breach of marriage, of sleep and of death.
What did his limbs, when gradually extended, encounter?
New clean bed linen, additional odors, the presence of a human form, female, hers, the imprint of a human form, male, not his. Some crumbs, some flakes of potted meat, recooked, which he removed.
Then
he kissed the plump, mellow, yellow, smellow melons of her rump, on each plump melanous hemisphere in their mellow yellow furrow, with obscure, prolonged, provocative melon-smellinous osculation.
the visible signs of post-satisfaction?
A silent contemplation, a tentative velation, a gradual abasement, a solicitous aversion, approximate erection.
What followed this silent action?
Somnolent invocation, less somnolent recognition, incipient excitation, catechetical interrogation.
In what posture?
Listener, reclined semi-laterally left, left hand under head, right leg extended in a straight line and resting on left leg, flexed in the attitude of Gaetellus, fulfilled, recumbent, big with seed. Narrator, reclined laterally left, with right and left legs flexed, the index finger and thumb of the right hand resting on the bridge of the nose in the attitude depicted in the snapshot photograph made by Percy Upjohn, the child-man weary, the man-child in the womb.
Womb? Weary?
He rests. He has traveled.
With?
Sinbad the sailor, and Tinbad the tailor, and Jinbad the jailer, and Whinbad the whaler, and Ninbad the nailer, and Finbad the failer, and Binbad the bailer, and Pinbad the paler, and Minbad the mailer, and Hinbad the hailer, and Rinbad the railer, and Dinbad the caler, and Vinbad the quailer, and Linbad the yailer, and Zinbad the failer.
When?
Going to dark bed, there was a square, round, Sinbad the sailor, roc's ox egg, in the night of the bed of all the ox of the rocks of Darkenbad, the bright daler.
Where? Period.
Period.
Thank you very much, Susan and Alan. We've come to the end of the first part of today's presentation. Stay with us at 2 o'clock. We'll be able to hear the rest of what Mr. Joyce had to say when he gives Molly the last word. We'll be back at 2 o'clock. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much to all of our readers, and we'll see you later. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to part 2 of the readings from James Joyce's Ulysses. As I said earlier, the last reading that we heard would have been the last section of the book. However, Mr. Joyce decided to leave the last word to a lady. Kathleen Fee will be our Molly.
Oft in the stilly night, as slumber's chains have bound me, fond memory brings the light of other days around me. The smiles, the tears of childhood years, the words of love then spoken, the eyes that shone, now dimmed and gone, the cheerful hearts now broken. Thus in the stilly night, as slumber's chains have bound me, sad memory brings the light of other days around me. When I remember all the friends so linked together, I've seen around me fall like leaves in wintry weather. Thus in the stilly night, as slumber's chains have bound me, sad memory brings the light of other days around me.
That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Kathleen. And it really sets the mood for Molly, who's lying in bed next to her husband, Leopold, who came back after a long night with an unexpected guest who had cocoa in the kitchen and decided not to stay overnight, much to Molly's dismay, as she discovers. Anyway, she finds it very difficult to sleep. She had quite an exciting day. If you don't already know, you'll probably find out a little bit more about it as I go through this extraordinary text. Oh, you know what? I thought of holding up the book and showing you if you don't know what it looks like. This is the final chapter of the book, which is called the Penelope chapter, is 8 very, very long sentences with no punctuation, not even an apostrophe. So if it's written W-E-E-R-E, you don't know whether it's they were or we're. Anyway, I figured it all out to the best of my ability. And here we go. Molly's in bed. Leopold is next to her. That's the way it goes. Yes, because he never did the thing like that before, is asked to get his breakfast in bed with a couple of eggs since the City Arms Hotel, when he used to be pretending to be laid up with his sick voice doing his highness to make himself interesting to that old faggot Mrs. Reardon that he thought he had a great leg of, and she never left us a farthing, all for masses for herself and her soul, greatest miser ever was, actually afraid to lay out 4pence for her methylated spirit, telling me all her ailments. Oh, she had too much old chat in her about politics and earthquakes and the end of the world. Oh, let us have a bit of fun first. God help the world if all the women were her sort, down on bathing suits and low necks. Of course, nobody wanted her to wear. I suppose she was pious because no man would look at her twice. Oh, God, I hope I'll never get like her. I wonder she didn't want us to cover our faces. But she was a well-educated woman, certainly, and her gabby talk about Mr. Reardon here and Mr. Reardon there. I suppose he was glad to get shut of her. And her dog, smelling my fur, and always edging to get up under my petticoats, especially then. Still, I like that in a man. Polite to old women like that, and waiters and beggars too. He's not proud out of nothing, but not always. If ever he got anything really serious the matter with him, it's much better for them to go into a hospital where everything is clean. But I suppose I'd have to dring it into him for a month. Yes, and then we'd have a hospital nurse next thing on the carpet. Have him staying there till they throw him out. Or a nun, maybe, like that smutty photo he has. She's as much a nun as I'm not. Yes, because they're so weak and puling when they're sick. They want a woman to get well. If his nose bleeds, you'd think it was, oh, tragic. And that dying-looking one off the South Circular when he sprained his foot at the choir party at the Sugarloaf Mountain, the day I wore that dress. Miss Jack bringing him flowers, the worst old one she could find at the bottom of the basket, anything at all to get into a man's bedroom, with her old maid's voice trying to imagine he was dying on account of her. To never see thy face again. Though he looked more like a man with his beard a bit grown in the bed. Father was the same. Besides, I hate bandaging and dosing. When he cut his toe with a razor, paring his corns, afraid he'd get blood poisoning. Oh, but if it was the thing I was sick, then we'd see what attention. Only, of course, the woman hides it, not to give all the trouble they do. Yes, he came somewhere, I'm sure, by his appetite. Anyway, love it's not, or he'd be off his feed thinking of her. So either it was one of those night women, if it was down there he was really, and the hotel story he made up a pack of lies to hide it, planning it. Hines kept me. Who did I meet? Ah, yes, I met, do you remember Menton? And who else? Who? Now let me see. That big babby face Menton. I saw him, and he's not long married, flirting with a young girl at Poole's Mariorama, and turned my back on him when he slinked out, looking quite conscious. What harm? But he had the impudence to make it up to me one time. Well done to him, mouth almighty and his boiled eyes. Of all the big stupos I ever met, and that's called a solicitor. Only for I hate having a long wrangle in bed. Or else if it's not that, it's some little bitch or other he got in with somewhere or picked up on the sly. If they only knew him as well as I do. Yes, because the day before yesterday, he was scribbling something, a letter, when I came into the front room to show him Dignam's death in the paper, as if something told me. And he covered it up with a blotting paper, pretending to be thinking about business. So very probably that was it, to somebody who thinks she has a softy in him, because all men get a bit like that, at his age especially, getting on to 40 he is now. So as to wheedle any money she can out of him. No fool like an old fool. Not that I care two straws who he does it with, or knew before in that way, though I'd like to find out. So long as I don't have the two of them under my nose all the time, like that slut, that Mary we had in Ontario Terrace, padding out her false bottom to excite him. Bad enough to get the smell of those painted women off him. Once or twice I had a suspicion, by getting him to come near me, when I found the long hair on his coat. Without that one, when I went into the kitchen, pretending he was drinking water. One woman is not enough for them. And it was all his fault, of course, ruining servants, then proposing that she could eat at our table on Christmas, if you please. Oh, no, thank you, not in my house. I was sure he had something on with that one. Takes me to find out a thing like that. He said, "You have no proof it was her." Proof? Oh, yes, suggesting me to go out to be alone with her. I wouldn't lower myself to spy on them. The garters I found in her room the Friday she was out, that was enough for me. A little bit too much. Her face swelled up on her with temper when I gave her week's notice. Better do without them altogether. Do out the rooms myself quicker. Only for the damn cooking and throwing out the dirt. I gave it to him anyhow. Either she goes or me leaves the house. I couldn't even touch him if I thought he was with a dirty, barefaced liar and slubbing like that one, denying it up to my face and singing about the place in the WC too, because she knew she was well off. Oh, yes. The last time, when was it? The night Boylan gave my hand a great squeeze going along by the Tolka. In my hand there steals another. I just pressed the back of his like that with my thumb to squeeze back, singing, "The young May moon, she's beaming, love," because he had an idea about him and me. He's not such a fool. He said, "I'm dining out and going to the Gaiety," though I'm not going to give him the satisfaction. In any case, God knows he's changed in a way, not to be always and ever wearing the same old hat. Unless I paid some nice-looking boy to do it, since I can't do it myself. A young boy would like me. I'd confuse him a little, alone with him, if we were. I'd let him see my garters, the new ones, and make him turn red looking at him, seduce him. I know what boys feel like with that down on their cheek. Why can't you kiss a man without going and marrying him first? You sometimes love too wildly when you feel that way, so nice all over you, you can't help yourself. Oh, I wish some man or other would take me sometime when he's there and kiss me in his arms. There's nothing like a kiss, long and hot down to your soul, almost paralyzes you. Then I hate that confession. When I used to go to Father Corrigan, "He touched me, Father." What harm if he had? Where? And I said, "On the canal bank," like a fool. "But whereabouts on your person, my child?" "On the leg, behind." "High up, was it?" "Yes, rather high up." "Was it where you sit down?" "Yes." Oh, Lord, couldn't he say bottom right out and have done with it? What has that got to do with it? And did you, whatever way he put it, I forget. "No, Father." And I always think of the real Father. What did he want to know for when I already confessed it to God? He had a nice fat hand, the palm moist always. I wouldn't mind feeling it. Neither would he, I'd say, with a bull neck and his horse collar. I wonder, did he know me in the box? I couldn't see his face. He couldn't see me, but of course he'd never turn or let on. Still, his eyes were red when his father died. They're lost for a woman, of course. Must be terrible when a man cries, let alone them. I'd like to be embraced by one in his vestments, and the smell of incense off him, like the Pope. One thing I didn't like is slapping me behind going away so familiarly in the hall, though I laughed. I'm not a horse or an ass, am I? I suppose he was thinking of his father. I wonder, is he awake, thinking of me, or dreaming? Am I in it? He had all he could do to keep himself from falling asleep after the last time. We took the port and potted meat. It had a fine, salty taste, yes, because I felt lovely and tired myself and fell asleep as sound as a top the moment I popped straight into bed, till that thunder woke me up as if the world was coming to an end. God be merciful to us. I thought the heavens were coming down about us to punish, when I blessed myself and said a Hail Mary, like those awful thunderbolts in Gibraltar. And they come and tell you there's no God. What could you do if it was running and rushing about? Nothing, only make an act of contrition. The candle I lit that evening in Whitefriars Street Chapel for the month of May, see? It brought its luck. Though he'd scoff if he heard, because he never goes to church, mass, or meeting. He says, your soul, you have no soul inside, only grey matter, because he doesn't know what it is to have one. I suppose it was meeting Josie Powell and the funeral and thinking about me and Boylan set him off. Well, he can think what he likes now if that'll do him any good. I know they were spooning a bit when I came on the scene. He was dancing and sitting it out with her the night of Georgina Simpson's housewarming, and then he wanted to ram it down my neck. I could always hear his voice talking when the room was crowded, and watch him. After that, I pretended I had a coolness on with her over him, because he used to be a bit on the jealous side whenever he asked, who are you going to? And I said, over to Floey's. And he made me the present of Lord Byron's poems and the 3 pairs of gloves. So that finished that. I could quite easily get him to make it up any time. I know how. Well, even supposing he got in with her again and was going to see her somewhere, I'd know. If he refused to eat the onions, I know plenty of ways. Ask him to tuck down the collar of my blouse, or touch him with my veil, and gloves on, going out, 1 kiss. Then would send them all spinning. However, all right then, let him go to her. She, of course, would only be too delighted to pretend she's mad in love with him. That I wouldn't mind so much. I'd just go to her and ask her, do you love him? And look her square in the eyes. She couldn't fool me. But he might imagine he was and make a declaration with his plabbery kind of a manner to her like he did to me, though I had the devil's own job to get it out of him. Though I liked him for that. It showed he could hold it in and wasn't to be got for the asking. He was on the pop of asking me, too, the night in the kitchen I was rolling the potato cake. There's something I want to say to you, only for I put him off, letting on I was in a temper with my hands and arms full of pastry flour. In any case, I let out too much the night before, talking of dreams, so I didn't want him to let him to know more than was good for him. He was very handsome at that time. Trying to look like Lord Byron, I said I liked, though he was too beautiful for a man. And, well, he was a little too before we got engaged. Oh, I'd rather die 20 times over than marry another of their sex. Of course, he'd never find another woman like me to put up with him the way I do. Know me, come sleep with me. Yes, and he knows that too at the bottom of his heart. Take that Mrs. Maybrick that poisoned her husband. For what, I wonder? In love with some other man. Yet it was found out on her. Wasn't she the downright villain to go and do a thing like that? Of course, some men can be dreadfully aggravating, drive you mad, and always the worst word in the world. Why do they ask us to marry them for if we're so bad as all that comes to? Yes, because they can't get on without us. White arsenic she put in his tea off fly paper, wasn't it? I wonder why they call it that. Oh, if I asked him, he'd say it's from the Greek. Leave us as wise as we were before. She must have been madly in love with the other fellow to run the chance of being hanged. Of course, she didn't care. If that was her nature, what could she do? Besides, they're not brutes enough to go and hang a woman, surely, are they? Oh, they're all so different, men. Boylan talking about the shape of my foot. He noticed at once, even before he was introduced, when I was in the DBC with Poldy, laughing and trying to listen. I saw him looking with his 2 old maids of sisters, and I stood up and asked the girl where it was. What do I care with it dropping out of me? I saw his eyes on my feet, going out through the turning door. He was looking when I looked back. And I went there for tea 2 days after in the hope. But he wasn't. Now, how did that excite him? Because I was crossing them when we were in the other room first. He meant the shoes that are too tight to walk in. My hand is nice like that. Oh, if only I had a ring with a stone for my month, a nice aquamarine. I'll stick him for one, and a gold bracelet. I don't like my foot so much. Bartle Darcy, too, that he used to make fun of when he commenced kissing me on the choir stairs. What are we waiting for, oh my heart? Kiss me straight on the brown part. Ooh, which is my brown part?
Falling lips and fading dream, blurs of white in a silent sea, shadows rising on you and me. Shadows rising on you and me. The shadows will make and I'm ready to fly. Waiting out on a windy sky. Goodbye, summer. Goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye, summer. Hush, a voice from the far away. Listen to learn, it seems to say, that tomorrows shall be as today. Tomorrow shall be as today, and the court is bright, the coast is dry, the ink must break, and I love must die. Goodbye to hope, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye to hope,
Thank you, Geraldina. For our audience, I'm breaking character now. That was Geraldina Mendez. Of course, Molly Bloom is an opera singer, and I'm not. So I've got two opera singer friends of mine, Geraldina and Kathleen McCauliffe, to sing some of Molly's songs as they occur in the monologue. So that was Goodbye. And of course, the joke is, what are we waiting for? Oh, my heart, kiss me straight on the brows and part. And Molly misinterprets and says, which is my brown part? Thinking about Bartle D'Arcy. He was pretty hot too, for all his tinny voice. My low notes he was always raving about, if you can believe him. I liked the way he used his mouth singing. Then he said, wasn't it terrible to do that there in a place like that? Well, I don't see anything so terrible about it. I'll tell him about that someday, not now, and surprise him. Aye, and I'll take him there and show him the very place we did it, too. So now, there you are, like it or lump it. He thinks nothing can happen without him knowing. He hadn't an idea about my mother till we were engaged. Otherwise, he'd never have got me so cheap as he did. He was 10 times worse himself anyhow, begging me to give him a tiny bit cut off my drawers. That was in the evening coming along Kenilworth Square. He kissed me in the eye of my glove, and I had to take it off, asking me questions. Is it permitted to inquire the shape of my bedroom? So I let him keep it, as if I forgot it, to think of me when... Now I saw him slip it into his pocket. Of course, he's mad on the subject of drawers, that's plain to see. Always skeezing at those brazen-faced things on the bicycles with their skirts blowing up to their navels, even when Millie and I were out with him. At the open-air fete, that one in the cream muslin standing right against the sun so he could see every atom she had on. When he saw me from behind, following in the rain. I saw him before he saw me, however, standing at the corner of the Harold's Cross Road with a new raincoat on him, with the muffler and the Zingari colors to show off his complexion, looking sly boots as usual. What was he doing there where he'd no business? They can go and get whatever they like from anything at all with a skirt on it, and we're not to ask any questions. But they want to know, where were you? Where are you going? I could feel him coming along, skulking after me, his eyes on my neck. He had been keeping away from the house. He felt it was getting too warm for him. So I half turned and stopped. Then he pestered me to say yes, till I took off my glove, slowly watching him. He said my open-work sleeves were too cold for the rain. Anything for an excuse to put his hand near me drawers. Drawers, the whole blessed time, till I promised to give him a pair off my doll to carry about in his waistcoat pocket. Oh, Maria Santissima, he did look a big fool dreeping in the rain. Splendid set of teeth he had, made me hungry to look at them, and beseeched of me to lift the orange petticoat I had on with the Sunray pleats, that there was nobody. He said he'd kneel down in the wet if I didn't. So persevering he would, too, and ruin his new raincoat. You never know what freak they'd take alone with you. They're so savage for it. Then he wrote me that letter with all those words in it. How could he have the face to any woman after his company manners, making it so awkward after when we met, asking me, have I offended you? With my eyelids down. Of course he saw I wasn't. He had a few brains. Not like that other fool, that Henny Doyle. He was always breaking or tearing something in the charades. I hate an unlucky man. And if I knew what it meant, of course I had to say no for form's sake. I don't understand you, I said. Wasn't it natural? So it is, of course. It used to be written up with a picture of a woman's on that wall in Gibraltar with that word I couldn't find anywhere. Then writing every morning a letter, sometimes twice a day. Oh, I liked the way he made love back then. He knew the way to take a woman when he sent me the 8 big poppies because mine was the 8th. Oh. Then I wrote. The night he kissed my heart at Dolphin's Barn, oh, I couldn't describe it. Simply, oh, it makes you feel like nothing on earth. but he never knew how to embrace well, like Gardner. Oh, I hope he'll come on Monday, as he said, at the same time, 4. I hate people who come at all hours. Answer the door, you think it's the vegetables. Then it's somebody, and you all undressed, or the door of the filthy, sloppy kitchen blows open. Oh, the day old frosty-faced Goodwin called about the concert in Lombard Street, and I, just after dinner, all flushed and tossed with boiling old stew. "Don't look at me, Professor," I had to say. "I'm a fright." Yes, but he was a real old gent in his way. It was impossible to be more respectful. Nobody to say you're out. You have to peep out through the blind. Like the messenger boy today, I thought it was a put-off first, him sending the port and peaches first. And I was just beginning to yawn with nerves, thinking he was trying to make a fool of me, when I knew his tat-tat-tat at the door. Then this day week we're to go to Belfast. Ooh, I love jaunting in a train or a car with lovely soft cushions. I wonder will he take a first class for me? He might want to do it in the train by tipping the guard. Woo! Well, I suppose there'll be the usual idiots of men gaping at us with their eyes as stupid as ever they can possibly be. That was an exceptional man, that common workman that left us alone in the carriage that day going to Howth. I'd like to find out something about him. 1 or 2 tunnels, perhaps. Then you have to look out the window. All the nicer than coming back. Suppose I never came back. What would they say? Eloped with him that gets you on the stage. Oh, that last concert I sang at. Where? Oh, God, it's over a year ago. On account of father being in the army and Poldy not Irish enough. Was it him managed it this time? I wouldn't put it past him. Like he got me on to sing in the Stabat Mater by going around saying he was putting Lead Kindly Light to music. I put him up to that, till the Jesuits found out he was a Freemason. Lead Thou Me On copied from some old opera. Yes. And he was going about with some of them Sinn Féin lately, or whatever they call themselves, talking his usual trash and nonsense. He says that little man he showed me without the neck is very intelligent. The coming man, Griffiths. Is he? Well, he doesn't look it. That's all I can say. Still, it must have been him. He knew there was a boycott. Oh, I hate the mention of their politics after the war. That Pretoria and Ladysmith and Bloemfontein, where Gardner, Lieutenant Stanley G, 8th Battalion, 2nd East Lancashire Regiment of enteric fever. Oh, he was a lovely fellow in khaki, and just the right height over me. I'm sure he was brave too. He said I was lovely the evening we kissed goodbye at the canal lock. My Irish beauty. He was pale with excitement about going away, or we'd seen be seen from the road. He couldn't stand properly, and I so hot as I never felt. Well, they could have made their peace in the beginning. Our old Paul and the rest of the old Krugers go and fight it out between them, instead of dragging on for years, killing any fine-looking men there were with their fever. If he was even decently shot, it wouldn't have been so bad. Oh, I love to see a regiment pass in review. The first time I saw the Spanish cavalry, at La Roque it was, lovely. After, looking across the bay from Algeciras, all the lights of the rock like fireflies, or those sham battles on the 15 acres, the Black Watch with their kilts in time at the march past, the 10th Hussars, the Prince of Wales' Own, or the Lancers. Oh, the Lancers, they're grand. Or the Dublins that won to Gulla. His father made his money over selling the horses for the cavalry. Well, he could buy me a nice present up in Dublin after what I gave him. They've lovely linen up there. Or one of those nice kimono things. I must buy a mothball like I had before to keep in the drawer with them. Oh, it would be exciting going round with him, shopping, buying those things in a new city. Better leave this ring behind. Want to keep turning and turning to get it over the knuckle. Oh, there. Or they might bell it round the town in their papers or tell the police on me. Oh, but they think we're married. Oh, let them all go and smother themselves for the fat lot I care. He has plenty of money, and he's not a marrying man, so somebody better get it out of him. If I could find out whether he likes me. I looked a bit washy, of course, when I looked in the hand glass, powdering. A mirror never gives you the expression. Besides, scrooching down on me like that all the time with his big hip bones. He's heavy, too, with his hairy chest, with his heat. Always having to lie down for them. Better for him to put it into me the way Mrs. Mastiansky told her husband made her, like the dogs do it, and stick out her tongue as far as ever she could. And he's so quiet and mild with his ting-a-ting-zither. Can you ever be up to men the way it takes them? Lovely stuff in that blue suit he had on, and stylish tie, and socks with the sky blue silk things on them. He's certainly well off, I know, by the cut his clothes have, and his heavy watch. But I don't know what kind of drawers he likes. None at all, I think, didn't he say? Yes. And half the girls in Gibraltar never wore them either. Naked as God made them. That Andalusian singing her Manola, she didn't make much secret of what she hadn't. Yes. And the second pair of silkette stockings is laddered after one day's wear. I could have brought them back to Lures this morning and kicked up a row and made that one change them, only not to upset myself and run the risk of running into him and ruining the whole thing. And one of those kid-fitting corsets I'd want, advertised cheap in the Gentlewoman, with elastic gores on the hips. He saved the one I have, but that's no good. What did they say? They give a delightful figure line, 11 and 6, obviating that unsightly broad appearance across the lower back to reduce flesh. My belly's a bit too big. I'll have to knock off the stout at dinner. Or am I getting too fond of it? The last they sent from O'Rourke's was as flat as a pancake. He makes his money easy. Larry, they call him. The old mangy parcel he sent at Christmas, a cottage cake and a bottle of hogwash he tried to palm off as claret that he couldn't get anyone to drink. God spare his spit for fear he'd die of a drought. Or I must do a few breathing exercises. Oh, I wonder if that anti-fat any good. Might overdo it. The thin ones are not so much in the fashion now. Garters, that much I have. The violet pair I wore today. That's all he bought me out of the check he got on the first. Oh no, there was the face lotion I finished the last of yesterday that made my skin like new. I told him over and over again, get that made up in the same place and don't forget it. God only knows whether he did after all I said to him. He said I could pose for a picture naked to some rich fellow in Hollis Street when he lost the job in Helly's, and I was selling the clothes and strumming in the Coffee Palace. Would I be like that bath of the nymph with my hair down? Yes. Only she's younger. Or I'm a little like that dirty bitch in that Spanish photo he has. Nymphs, used they to go about like that? I asked him about her, and that word met, something with hoses in it, and he came out with some jawbreakers about the incarnation. He never can explain a thing simply the way a body can understand. Then he goes and burns the bottom out of the pan, all for his kidney. I declare, somebody ought to put him in the budget. If I could only remember the one half of the things and write a book out of it. The works of Master Poldy. Yes. Free from train somewhere whistling. Oh, the strength those engines have in them, like big giants, and the water rolling all over and out of them, all sides. The poor men that have to be out all the night from their wives and families in those roasting engines. Stifling it was today. Oh, I'm glad I burned the half of those old Freemans and photo bits. Leaving things like that lying about, he's getting very careless, and threw the rest of them up in the WC. I'll get him to cut them tomorrow for me, instead of having them there for the next year, to get a few pence for them. Have him asking, where's last January's paper? And all those old overcoats I bundled out of the hall, making the place hotter than it is. Oh, that rain was lovely and refreshing just after my beauty sleep. I thought it was going to get like Gibraltar. My goodness, the heat there before the Levanter came on, black as night, and the glare of the rocks standing up in it, like a big giant compared with their 3-rock mountain they think is so great. with the red sentries here and there. The poplars, they all white hot, and the smell of the rainwater in those tanks. Watching the sun all the time weltering down on you. Faded all that lovely frock father's friend Mrs. Stanhope sent me from the Beaumarchais Paris. What a shame, my dearest Doggerina, she wrote on it. She was very nice. What's this her other name was? Just a PC to tell you I sent the little present. I've just had a jolly warm bath and feel a very clean dog now. Enjoyed it. Wogger, she called him Wogger, would give anything to be back in Jib and hear you sing Waiting and In Old Madrid.
There on the casement ledge when they was there, a tiny hand was lightly laid, a face looked out us from the river shore. There stood a tender serenade from the lover's holy song, and light and low from shore to shore, but the river flowed along, it women evermore. Come, my love, the stars are shining, time is flying, love is sighing. Come for thee, a heart is fighting, here alone I wait for thee. Far, far away from old Madrid, our lover fell long years ago for Spain. A convent tale, the sweet eyes hid, and all the vows that love has sighed were vain. But still between the dusk and night is set, her white and orbs, the light is white. The fates will take the hope that serenade, blow to wait in the earth the misty tide. Still it's her lover's song, still he sings upon the shore. The flows of stream that almost strong, need women evermore. Come, my love, the stars are shining, time is flying, love is sighing. Come for thee, your heart is fighting, here alone I wait for thee. Alone I wait for thee. My love, I wait for thee. Oh, come, my love, I wait for thee. I wait for thee. My love, for thee.
She didn't look a bit married, just like a girl. He was years older than her. Wogger. He was awfully fond of me. When he held down the wire with his foot for me to step over at the bullfight at La Linea, when that matador Gomez was giving the bulls the ear. These clothes we have to wear. Whoever invented them? All stazed up. You can't do a blessed thing in them in the crowd. Run or jump out of the way. That's why I was afraid when that other ferocious old bull began to charge. the banderilleros with the sassers and the two things in their hats, and the brutes of men shouting, "Bravo, toro!" Sure, the women were as bad in their nice white mantillas, ripping all the whole insides out of those poor horses. I never heard of such a thing in all my life, yes. Now, he used to break his heart at me taking off the dog barking in Bell Lane. Poor brute, and it's sick. Oh, what became of them ever? I suppose they're dead long ago, the two of them. It's like all through a mist. Makes you feel so old. The days like years, not a letter from a living soul, except the odd few I posted to myself with bits of paper in them. So bored. As bad as now, with the hands hanging off of me. Looking out the window, oh, if there were a nice fellow even in the opposite house. That medical in Hollis Street the nurse was after, when I put on my gloves and hat at the window to show I was going out. Not a notion what I meant. Aren't they thick? Never understand what you say even. You'd want to print it up on a big poster for them. Where does their great intelligence come in, I'd like to know? Grey matter. They have it all in their tail, if you ask me. Those country gougers up in the City Arms, intelligence. They had a damn sight less than the bulls and cows they were selling. Who did I get the last letter from? Oh, Mrs. Dwen. Now, what possessed her to write from Canada after so many years, to know the recipe I had for pisto madrileno? Oh, Chloe Dillon, since. Now, she wrote to say she was married to a very rich architect, if I'm to believe all I hear, with a villa and 8 rooms. Her father was an awfully nice man. He was near 70, always good-humoured. Well now, Miss Tweedy, or Miss Gillespie. Ah, there's the piano. Oh, that was a solid silver coffee service he had too on the mahogany sideboard. Then dying so far away. Oh, I hate people that have always their poor story to tell. Everybody has their own troubles. Oh, I hope he'll write me a longer letter the next time, if it's a thing he really likes me. Oh, thanks be to the great God, I got somebody to give me what I badly wanted, to put some heart up into me. You have no chances at all in this place like you used to long ago. It's all very fine for them, but as for being a woman, as soon as you're old, they might as well throw you out in the bottom of the ash pit. Mulvey's was the first, when I was in bed that morning, and Mrs. Rubio brought it in with the coffee. She stood there standing when I asked her to hand me, and I, pointing at them, I couldn't think of the word, a hairpin to open it with, horquilla. This obliging old thing, and it staring her in the face. An admirer, we signed it. Ooh, I near jumped out of my skin. I wanted to pick him up when I saw him following me along the Calle Real in the shop window, but I never thought he'd write, making an appointment. I had it inside my petticoat bodice all day, reading it, while Father was up at the hill instructing, to find out by the handwriting or the language of stamps. Singing, I remember, "Shall I wear a white rose?"
Shall I wear a white rose? Shall I wear a red? Will he look for garlands? What shall wreath my head? Will a ribbon charm him fair upon my breast? Scarce I can remember I shall need no roses if his heart be true. Not a single wreathlet, red or white or blue. In tomorrow's twilight, when my soul's at rest, then I shall not ask him how he loves me best. How he loves me best. How he loves me best. Shall I wear a white rose? Shall I wear a red? Will he look for garlands? What to wreathe my head? Will he look for garlands? What should wreathe? Should wreathe my
He was the first man kissed me under the Moorish wall. It never entered my head what kissing meant till he put his tongue in my mouth. His mouth was sweet, like young. I put my knee up to him a few times to learn the way. What did I tell him I was engaged for? For fun? To the son of a Spanish nobleman named Don Miguel de la Flora. And he believed me, that I was to be married to him in 3 years' time. Oh, there's many a true word spoken in jest. I got him excited. He crushed all the flowers on my bosom he brought me. Then, the day before he left, May, yes, it was May. I'm always like that in the spring. I'd like a new fellow every year. Up on the tip-top under the rock gun near O'Hara's tower, I told him it was struck by lightning, and all about the old Barbary apes they sent to Clapham without a tail, careening all over the show on each other's back. I had that white blouse on, open in the front, to encourage him as much as I could, without too openly. We lay over the fir tree grove, a wild place. I suppose it must be the highest rock in existence. The ships out far like chips. That was the Malta boat passing, yes. The sea and the sky. Oh, you could do what you liked, lie there forever. I could see his chest, pink. He wanted to touch mine with his for a moment, but I wouldn't let him. He was awfully put out first. I wouldn't let him touch me inside my petticoat because I had a skirt opening up the side. Oh, I tormented the life out of him first, tickling him, his eyes shut, and a bird flying below us. He was shy. All the same, I liked him like that, moaning. I made him blush a little when I got over him that way. Molly, darling, he called me. What was his name? Jack? Joe? Harry Mulvey, was it? Yes, I think a lieutenant. He was rather fair. He had a laughing kind of voice. He said he'd come back. Lord, it's just like yesterday to me. And if I was married, he'd do it to me, and I promised him, yes, faithfully, I'd let him. Perhaps he's dead or killed, or a captain or an admiral. It's nearly 20 years. I was a bit wild after. I wanted to fire his pistol. He didn't know what to make of me with his peak cap on that he always wore crooked. The fun we had running along Willis's Road to Europa Point, twisting in and out all round the other side of Jersey. Oh, I was jumping up at the pepper trees and the white poplars, pulling the leaves off and throwing them at him. He went to India. I was thinking of him on the sea all the time after at Mass, when my petticoat began to slip down at the elevation. Weeks and weeks I kept the handkerchief under my pillow for the smell of him. He gave me that clumsy cladder ring for luck that I gave Gardner going to South Africa, where those Boers killed him with their war and fever. Once in the dear dead days beyond recall.
Once in the dear dead days beyond recall, when on the world the mists began to fall, out of our dreams that rose in happy throng, lo, to our hearts love song, an old sweet song. And in the dusk where fell the firelight gleam, softly it wove itself into our dream. Just a song at twilight when the lights are low and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight comes love's old song, comes love's old sweet song. Even today we hear love's song of yore. Deep in our hearts it dwells forevermore. Footsteps may falter, weary grow the way. Still we can hear it at the close of day. So till the end, when life's dim shadows fall, love will be found the sweetest song of all. Just a song at twilight when the lights are low and the flickering shadows softly come and go. Though the heart be weary, sad the day and long, still to us at twilight comes love's old song, comes love's old sweet song.
Gardner said no man could look at my mouth and teeth smiling like that and not think of it. I was afraid he mightn't like my accent first. He's so English. All father left me in spite of his stamps. I've my mother's eyes and figure anyhow. He always said, they're so snotty about themselves, some of those cads. He wasn't a bit like that. Oh, I feel some wind in me. Better go easy, not wake him. Have him at it again, slobbering, after washing every bit of myself, back, belly, and sides. If we had even a bath itself, or my own room anyway. Oh, I wish he'd sleep in some bed by himself with his cold feet on me. Give us room even to let her fart. God, or do the least thing. Ugh. Better. Who knows if that pork chop I took with my cup of tea after was quite good with the heat. I couldn't smell anything off it. I'm sure that queer little man in the pork butcher's is a great rogue. Oh, I hope that lamp is not smoking. Fill my nose up with smuts. Better than having him leaving the gas on all night. I couldn't rest easy in my bed, in Gibraltar even, getting up to sea. Oh, why am I so damn nervous about that? Though I like it in the winter. It's more company. Oh, Lord, it was rotten cold too that winter, when I was only about 10, was I? Yes, I had that big doll with all the funny clothes, dressing her up and undressing. That icy wind sheeting across from those mountains, the something Nevada, a Sierra Nevada, yeah. Standing at the fire with a little bit of a short shift I had up to heat myself. I loved dancing about in it, then make a race back into bed. I'm sure that fellow opposite used to be there the whole time watching with the lights out. In the summer, and I in my skin hopping around. Oh, I used to love myself then, stripped at the washstand, dabbing and creaming. Only when it came to the chamber performance, I put out the light. Goodbye to my sleep for this night, anyhow. I hope he's not going to get in with those medicals, leading him astray, to imagine he's young again. Coming in at 4 in the morning, it must be, if not more. Still, he had the manners not to wake me. What did they find to gabber about all night? Squandering money and getting drunker and drunker? Couldn't they drink water? Then he starts giving us his orders for eggs and tea and Findon Haddie and hot buttered toast. I suppose we'll have him sitting up like the king in the country, pumping the wrong end of the spoon up and down in his egg, wherever he learned that from. And I love to hear him falling up the stairs of a morning with the cups rattling on the tray, and then play with the cat. She rubs up against you for her own sake. I wonder how she flees. She's as bad as a woman, always lecking and licking. But I hate their claws. I wonder, do they see anything that we can't? Staring like that when she sits at the top of the stairs so long and listening as I wait, always. What a robber, too. That lovely fresh place I bought. I think I'll get a bit of fish tomorrow. Or today, is it? Friday, yes. Yes, I will. With some blancmange with black currant jam like long ago. Not those 2-pound pots of mixed plum and apple from the London and Newcastle. Williams and Woods goes twice as far. Only for the bones. I hate those eels. Cod, yes. Yes, I get a nice piece of cod. I'm always getting enough for 3, forgetting. Anyway, I'm sick of that everlasting butcher's meat from Buckley's. Every day I get up, there's something new on. Some sweet God. Well, when I'm stretched out dead in my grave, I suppose I'll get some peace. I want to get up a minute if I'm... Wait. Oh, Jesus, wait. Yes. Oh, that thing has come on me. Yes. Oh, now wouldn't that afflict you? Now what am I to do? Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Oh, wouldn't that pester the soul out of a body? Unless he likes it. Some men do, God knows. Oh, there's always something wrong with us. 5 days every 3 or 4 weeks. Usual monthly auction. Isn't it simply sickening? I bet the cat itself is better off than us. Have we too much blood up in us or what? Who knows, is there anything the matter with my insides? I ought to go to the doctor. Only it'd be like before I married him when I had that white thing coming from me and Chloe made me go to that dry old stick Dr. Collins for women's diseases on Pembroke Road. Your vagina, he called it. I suppose that's how he got all the gilt mirrors and carpets, getting round those rich ones off Stephen's Green, running up to him for every fiddle-faddle. Oh, this nuisance of a thing. I hope they'll have something better for us in the other world. God, here we are as bad as ever after 16 years. How many houses were we in at all? Raymond Terrace and Ontario Terrace and Lombard Street and Hollis Street. And he goes about whistling every time we're on the run again, his Huguenots or the Frog's March, pretending to help the men with our 4 sticks of furniture. And then the City Arms Hotel, worse and worse. That charming place on the landing, always someone inside praying, then leaving all their stinks after them. Always know who was in there last. Every time we're just getting on right, something happens. Or he puts his big foot in it. Toms and Hellies and Mr. Cuffs and Drimmies. Either he's going to be run into prison over his old lottery tickets that was to be all our salvations, or he goes and gives impudence. We'll have him coming home with a sack soon out of the Freeman, too, like the rest, on account of those Sinn Fein or the Freemasons. Then we'll see if the little man he showed me dribbling along in the wet all by himself round by Cody's Lane will give him much consolation that he says it's so capable and sincerely Irish. Yeah, he is indeed, judging by the sincerity of the trousers I saw on him. Daedalus. I wonder. It's like those names in Gibraltar. de la Paz, de la Gracia. They had the devil's queer names there. Father Villaplana of Santa Maria that gave me the rosary. Rosales y O'Reilly in the Calle Las Siete Revueltas, and Pisimbo, and Mrs. Opisso in Governor Street. Oh, what a name. I'd go and drown myself in the first river if I had a name like her. I always liked poetry when I was a girl. First I thought he was a poet, like Lord Byron, and not an ounce of it in his composition. I thought he was quite different. I wonder, is he too young? He's about, 88. I was married. 88. Millie is 15 yesterday. 89. What age was he then at Dillon's? 5 or 6 about? 88. I suppose he's 20 or more. I'm not too old for him if he's 23 or 24. I hope he's not that stuck-up university student sort. No, otherwise he wouldn't go sitting down in the old kitchen with him, taking Eps's soda and cocoa and talking. Of course he pretended to understand it all. Probably he told him he was out of Trinity College. He's very young to be a professor. Oh, I hope he's not a professor like Goodwin was. He was a potent professor of John Jameson. They all write about some woman in their poetry. Well, I suppose he won't find many like me, where softly sighs of love the light guitar, where poetry is in the air. The blue sea and the moon shining so beautifully, coming back on the night boat from Tarifa. The lighthouse at Europa Point. The guitar that fellow played was so expressive. Will I ever go back there again? All new faces. 2 glancing eyes, a lattice hid. Ooh, I'll sing that for him. They're my eyes if he's anything of a poet. 2 eyes as darkly bright as love's own star. Oh, aren't those beautiful words? As love's young star. It'll be a change, the Lord knows, to have an intelligent person to talk to about yourself, not always listening to him and Billy Prescott's ad and Keyes's ad and Tom the Devil's ad. Oh, then if anything goes wrong in their business, we have to suffer. I'm sure he's very distinguished. I'd like to meet a man like that. God, not those other ruck. Besides, he's young. Those fine young men I could see down in Margate Strand bathing place from the side of the rock, standing up in the sun, naked, like a god or something, and then plunging into the sea with them. Why aren't all men like that? There'd be some consolation for a woman. Like that lovely little statue he bought. I could look at him all day long, curly head and his shoulders, his finger up for you to listen. There's real beauty and poetry for you. I often felt I wanted to kiss him all over. I'm sure it'll be grand if I can only get in with a handsome young poet at my age. I'll throw the tarot first thing in the morning to see if the wish card comes out. Or I'll try pairing the lady herself and see if he comes out. I'll read and study all I can find, or learn a bit off by heart, if I knew who he likes, so he won't think me stupid, if he thinks all women are the same. And I can teach him the other part. I'll make him feel all over him till he have faints under me. Then he'll write about me, lover and mistress, publicly too, with our 2 photographs in all the papers when he becomes famous. Oh, but then what am I going to do about him, though? Oh, the ignoramus that doesn't know poetry from a cabbage. That's what you get for not keeping them in their proper place, pulling off his clothes and trousers there on the chair before me, so barefaced, without even asking permission, and standing out that vulgar way in the half of a shirt they wear, to be admired, like a priest or a butcher, or those old hypocrites in the time of Julius Caesar. Of course, he's right enough in his way to pass the time as a joke. Sure, you might as well be in bed with what? With a lion. God, I'm sure he'd have something better to say for himself an old lion would. Jealousy. Why can't we all remain friends over it instead of quarreling? What else were we given all those desires for, I'd like to know? I can't help it if I'm young still, can I? It's a wonder I'm not an old shriveled hag before my time, living with him so cold, never embracing me,
except sometimes when he's asleep, not knowing, I suppose, who he has. Still, of course, a woman wants to be embraced 20 times a day almost to make her look young. No matter by who, so long as to be in love or loved by somebody if the fellow you want isn't there. What they do themselves, the fine gentlemen in their silk hats. Oh, move over, you big carcass, out of that, for the love of Mike. Listen to him. The winds that waft my sighs to thee, so well he may sleep and sigh. The great suggester, Don Poldo de la Flora. If he knew how he came out on the cards this morning, he'd have something to sigh. A dark man in some perplexity. I don't care what anybody says. It'd be much better for the world to be governed by the women in it. You wouldn't see women going and killing one another and slaughtering. When do you ever see women rolling around drunk like they do, or gambling every penny they have and losing it on the horses? Yes, because a woman, whoever she is, she knows when to stop. Still, it's a lovely hour, so silent. I used to love coming home after dances, the air of the night. I declare to God I don't feel a day older than then. I wonder could I get my tongue around any of the Spanish. ¿Cómo está usted? Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y usted? See? I haven't forgotten it all. I thought I had, only for the grammar. A noun is the name of any person, place, or thing. What a pity he didn't stay. I'm sure the poor fellow is dead tired. It'd be great fun, supposing he stayed with us. Well, why not? There's a room upstairs empty, and Millie's bed in the back room. He could do his writing and studies at the table in there for all the scribbling he does at it. Oh, I'd love to have a long talk with an intelligent, well-educated person. I'd have to get a nice pair of red slippers, like those Turks with the fez used to sell, or yellow, and a nice semi-transparent morning gown that I badly want, or a peach blossom dressing jacket like the one long ago in Walpole's, only 8 and 6, or 18 and 6. I'll just give him one more chance. I suppose they're just getting up in China now, combing out their pigtails for the day. We'll soon have the nuns ringing the Angelus. Oh, let me see if I can doze off. 1, 2, 3, 4. What kind of flowers are those they invented? Like the stars. Oh, the wallpaper in Lombard Street was much nicer. Better lower this lamp and try again so I can get up early. I'll go to Lamb's there beside Finlater's to get them to send us some flowers to put about the place in case he brings them home tomorrow. Today, I mean. Oh, no. Friday's an unlucky day. I love flowers. I'd love to have the whole place swimming in roses. God of heaven, there's nothing like nature. The wild mountains, then the sea and the waves rushing, then the beautiful country with the fields of oats and wheat and all kinds of things, and all the fine cattle going about that would do your heart good to see. Rivers and lakes and flowers, all sorts of shapes and smells and colors springing up, even out of the ditches, primroses and violets. Nature it is. As for them saying there's no God, I wouldn't give a snap of my 2 fingers for all their learning. Why don't they go and create something, I often ask him. Atheists, or whatever they call themselves, go and wash the cobbles off themselves first. Then they go howling for the priest and they dine. And why? Why, because they're afraid of hell on account of their bad conscience. They might as well try to stop the sun from rising tomorrow. The sun shines for you, he said the day we were lying among the rhododendrons on Howth Head, in the grey tweed suit and his straw hat, the day I got him to propose to me. Yes. First I gave him a bit of seed cake out of my mouth. And it was leap year, like now. Yes, 16 years ago. My God, after that long kiss, I near lost my breath. Yes. He said I was a flower of the mountain. Yes, so we are, flowers all. A woman's body, yes. That was one true thing he said in his life. And the sun shines for you today. Yes, that was why I liked him. Because I saw he understood or felt what a woman is. And I knew I could always get round him. And I gave him all the pleasure I could, leading him on till he asked me to say yes. And I wouldn't answer at first. Only looked out over the sea and the sky. I was thinking of so many things he didn't know of. Mulvey and Mr. Stanhope and Hester and Father and old Captain Groves and the sailors playing All Birds Fly and I Say Stoop and washing up dishes, they called it on the pier. And the sentry in front of the governor's house with the thing round his white helmet, poor devil half roasted, and the Spanish girls laughing in their shawls and their tall combs, and the auctions in the morning, the Greeks and the Jews and the Arabs and the devil knows who else from all the ends of Europe, and Duke Street and the fowl market, all clucking outside Larvy Sharon's, and the poor donkeys slipping half asleep, and the vague fellows in the cloaks asleep, and the shade on the steps, and the big wheels of the carts of the bulls, and the old castle, thousands of years old, yes, and those handsome Moors, all in white, and turbans like kings, asking you to sit down in their little bit of a shop, and Rhonda with the old windows of the posadas, two glancing eyes, a lattice hid, for her lover to kiss the iron, and the wine shops half open at night, and the castanets, and the night we missed the boat at Algeciras, the watchman going about serene with his lamp, and oh, that awful deep down torrent, oh, and the sea crimson sometimes like fire, and the glorious sunsets, and the fig trees in the Alameda Gardens, yes, and all the queer little streets, and the pink and blue and yellow houses, and the rose gardens, and the jessamine and geraniums and cactuses, and Gibraltar as a girl, where I was a flower of the mountain, yes, when I put the rose in my hair like the Andalusian girls used, or shall I wear a red? Yes, and how he kissed me under the Moorish wall, and I thought, well, as well him as another. And then I asked him with my eyes to ask again, yes. And then he asked me, would I? Yes, to say yes, my mountain flower. And first I put my arms around him, yes, and drew him down to me so he could feel my breasts all perfume, yes. And his heart was going like mad. And yes, I said, yes, I will, yes.
What else can anybody say after hearing that? But yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Kathleen. Before we go any further, there are other thank yous that have to be made. Please bear with me. I have a few things written down so that I don't forget. A festival such as this requires a lot of people to make it happen. Let me begin by thanking the members of the Board of Directors of Festival Bloomsday Montreal, who have worked since last year to put things together. The COVID-19 virus hit, and we thought that was it. Throw in the towel and see if we can put the pieces back together for next year, or whenever we can hold a festival with live audiences. Our fabulous and soon-to-be legendary Vice President, Kathleen Fee, came up with the idea of going online to try to save some of the furniture. Kathleen has worked tirelessly to pull us out of the fire to where we are. There's even some thought that we might be able to use some of what we have learned this year to produce a new kind of festival with some live and some live streamed events. We also must thank her for being our Molly. None of this could have been done without the special knack of our secretary, Judith Sherman, whose grant writing skills are beyond compare. David Sherman, our past president, who began this whole thing based on an idea that came up in a study group at the McGill Community for Lifelong Learning, is the main why we've got to where we are today, the second biggest Bloomsday in the world, after Dublin, of course. Our intrepid treasurer, Louise Cochon, has mastered the art of juggling with numbers to make sure that everything comes out right at the end. Astrid Torvik, another board member, has always been ready to do things from writing up press releases to mustering volunteers whenever we needed them. During the year, we depended on our web and our social media person, Jordan Giroux and Dara Kilkenny Mondu, to let people know what we were doing. We had help from several sources through generous donations in money or in kind. Heritage Canada, the Embassy of Ireland, especially with the help of Laura Finley, the Zellers Foundation, the McGill Community for Lifelong Learning, the Canadian School of Irish Studies at Concordia U, especially in the person of Dr. Michael Keneally, Marian Mulvena, Martina Skalkogiannis, the Westmount Public Library with Laura Bayako, Donna Locke, and Julie Ann Cardella, the Atwater Library with Lynn Verge, the Jewish Public Library with Roxana Bronze, CBC Radio in Montreal, in the person of Ainsley McClellan and the team of All in a Weekend on Saturday and Sunday mornings. Craig Morris, who shares of Joyce in company of other celebrities, which are on our website. Geraldina Mendez, who worked on the concert and moderated the academic panels. Miles Murphy, who organized the academic panels. Dennis Trudeau, who acted as MC for the concert. Anne Lewis, who read her prose poem. Desmond Ellis, Brian Dooley, Larissa Andrecision, who read her poems. Our musicians, Kathleen McAuliffe, Patrick Hutchinson, Natalia, Kate Bevan Baker and her group Boomerang, Joanne Patry. We can't forget Donovan King, who accepted the challenge of doing a walking tour without his usual audience while being filmed under the supervision of Sid Sanforlin. The Westmount Magazine for help in publicity. Our panelists, Marcelo Zabaloy in Argentina, Peter Stockland in Montreal, John McCourt in Trieste, Kayla Fanning in Montreal, our playwright, Colleen Curran, alias Carmel O'Reilly, our readers today, Clive Brewer, Pat Machin, who not only read, but who was the person responsible for scripting the readings, Phelan Cox, Morris Podbury, Alan Lombard, Susan Gilmore Lombard, all of our individual donors, Edmund Nash of Impulsion Services, who managed to get us online in one piece. Without his magic, we would have gone nowhere. Leopold Bloom's ancestors would say, next year in Jerusalem. We will say, next year in Montreal. Goodbye and peace be to you all. Amen.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So won't you please say hello to the folks that I know, tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Yes, I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
J'en ai un qui a pris ma place.